Hey, what's up, guys? Today I'm going to show you how to create a custom chart for Rocksmith 2014 Remastered. So there's going to be like a first half of this guide that's kind of like the charting basics, but then it's going to go more into like the notation. So this is kind of like an all-in-one guide, or at least I want it to be, that covers like about as much as you can with charts. There may be some stuff missing, but it should be a majority of what's out there. So stick around for all of it if you can. I will have chapters and everything because it's going to be a very long video, so just make sure to pick out the chapters you want and sit through some of it. I'll do a chart speed run at the end as well, and you can just see what I do basically and kind of go from there if you don't want to watch a 3-hour video, because I do go over some little things and that would at least make your chart look way better. So we can go ahead and get started here. So the first thing you want to get is Editor on Fire. I'll put a link to this in the description. Second thing you want is the DLC builder. I will put the link to this as well. You just open this GitHub here and just download the executable, or I think if you got Mac, you gotta download this here. But always make sure you get this up to date. In the program, it'll make you update it as well, so you don't have to like go here every time. And then there's also a written guide for this as well, so you can check this out. It's by Firecorn. I'll put a link to this in the description. It has pretty much everything I'm going to go over in this video. And then there's also this guide here for official looking customs. So this is to polish your chart up, make it look nice basically, which I'll go over in like the second half of this video. But there's some stuff in here that's pretty nice, and you can go over this if you want, you forget something. And then I'm gonna briefly mention this, but there's also a new charting program called Charter, and it's by this person here. I think it's the new thing. Like, they're gonna try and eventually switch over to it at some point, but this guide is on Editor on Fire. But this thing does have a nice little in-game preview here, but it's quite different than Editor on Fire, so I'm just kind of throwing this in here, that there may be some videos for this in the future. Maybe I'll make one, I don't know. But this is on Editor on Fire, so you would go here and download it. This is the Customs Forge link. I'll put it in the description, and you just click download here. So once you get it downloaded here, you'll get your little zip file. It'll be WinRAR or whatever. You just open it and you'll get this here. So Editor on Fire doesn't actually install on your computer. It just runs out of an executable. So I would highly recommend making one singular folder for all this stuff, and I would put Editor on Fire in there and then make shortcuts to it on your start menu and all that. So for example, in one of my hard drives, I just have a Rocksmith charting folder, and then here I put like everything, all my tools, all my charts. I put everything in here. So I just dump Editor on Fire in here, and then you can just run it through this eof.exe. So I would highly recommend doing this, and especially if you got OneDrive or Google Drive, you can also put it on there. That way it has a backup of your charts and everything, just in case you lose your computer one day. But it's also nice because it just keeps everything organized. Like, I keep all of my DLCs in here. I keep all the tools, so I don't really have to go that far to get to anything. But I also wouldn't recommend just running it out of your downloads folder. I would actually recommend, making a folder for all this. That way you don't get confused on where everything's located at. So arguably the most important part of all of this is getting your tab. So you want to vet your tabs extremely hard, especially if you're getting them off like, Ultimate Guitar or Songster or something, where people just randomly throw tabs out. You want to, look into the band, look into the song especially, watch them play it live. Know what tuning it's in, look up the guitar gear and make sure, if they're using a 8-string and then for some reason the tab is in like 6-string and they just miss half the notes and it's not even right or something, obviously it's not a good tab. So, and on Ultimate Guitar, you can check the comments, and if somebody says this tab is the worst tab I've ever seen, probably don't download it. But this is just one here. Kind of cocky, but I transcribed this song. I'm version 2 here, but this is the only example I can think of, so that's why I picked it. But Static X plays in drop A sharp or C standard, and it's always been like that. But for some reason, this dude tabbed in E standard, and even if you drop this to drop A sharp, most of the octaves are wrong. And he also put like power chords where there's supposed to be octaves and stuff. So, and then like, bro put like power chords in E standard, like the 1-finger power chords. Like, what are you doing? So this is an example of a tab. I know a lot about the band, and I know like how guitar works. So I would like, you need to be in drop for these to actually sound right and not sound weird. So this is just an example of like a tab you don't want to get. You know, it looks fancy. It's got all the synths and drums and all that, but then when you look at the guitar, it's like, bro, what is this? And then you can, like my version here that I made, you can tell it's like, you know, it's in a drop tuning, and they use, you know, A sharp power chords and all that. So, you know, definitely vet your tabs as hard as you can if you're getting them off Ultimate Guitar and Songster. Obviously, it's better to go to a place like Sheet Happens to get your tabs, you know, the official place to get them. You know, usually they're approved by the artist and stuff. They sometimes have mistakes, but it's kind of rare. You know, this is better than Ultimate Guitar. And look, you can even get 15% off your first order here. So there you go, cheap tabs. You can always go here. You don't have to buy the book. You can buy like digital versions, and they're usually cheaper, and they come with the guitar profiles, and they're pretty much ready to just import at that point. So I'd recommend, you know, getting official tabs, or, you know, you can even hit up the artist on like Instagram or something if they're a small enough artist, and maybe they'll have tabs you can buy from them too. I've seen it happen. I know the bassist from Haken sells tabs on his own, so, you know, it wouldn't hurt to try that out if you get like a small band. Um, yeah, just I always recommend vetting your tabs extremely hard. You know, make sure you actually get good ones and don't just download trash and just throw it in there. You know, maybe make sure you're actually able to play this stuff for the most part if you can't get official tabs, you know, to make sure the Ultimate Guitar people aren't just tripping and are deaf. So when you're dealing with really old songs like from the 70s and 80s and sometimes the 90s, a lot of the time they didn't really tune the guitar right, or they sped up or slowed down the recording, so the song ends up not being an A440. If you don't know what that means, you probably just look it up and learn about it, or I would outsource this part to somebody that knows what they're doing. But you want to make sure it's pitch corrected to A440, or you could at least, you know, get the correct, you know, sense that it's off, and then you can put it in the DLC builder. That way people know it's not an A440, because a lot of people will just put out charts and not realize it's not A440, and then it sounds way off when you go to play it. So the first thing I like to do, especially with older songs, is just check the pitch here with this program. So this is Tone Art. I'll put this link in the description, and you just click download PC or Mac, whichever one you got, and then it'll give you this little program here. So this program, you can load a song. The most egregious example of songs not being A440 I can think of is He Sells by Megadeth. A lot of those songs are like A430 or something, so they're quite flat compared to how they're normally supposed to be. So we'll go in here and grab this. Alright, so we're going to use the Conjuring as the example here. So as you can see, it's an A429.3. I'm not going to say this program's like 100% perfect, however, it has been for me so far on a lot of the songs I've been correcting, so it's definitely a good guideline. You know, just use your ears and make sure it sounds close enough. So I'll show you how bad this is off. I got my guitar hooked up. Alright, so we'll play these chords out and see how bad off it is. So we'll go ahead and start from the beginning here. So as you can tell, that is definitely not an A440. So to correct that, we would open it here in Audacity, and then you can go to Effect, Change Pitch, and then you got your number from earlier, so it's 429.3, and then you put this to 440. However, since I've done this one before, I know that I need to go up a little bit more than just this. So it's just one of those things where you need to render it out a bunch of times. Change your little semitones here until you get it right. So you can just apply this here. Honestly, this isn't that much of a difference of what it would be, but I'm just doing that because I already know what it is. So we'll go ahead and play it again and see what it sounds like from the beginning. So now you can tell, it's way more in tune than it was. So you can double check with your program here. So go ahead and reload your program or your song that you just rendered out. Now you can see it's at A440.1. So we're in tune now. So this is how you pitch correct. I'm gonna put a link to Dell's written guide on this as well, because there's a lot more things you can do. Like you can, with this, it may be a little bit closer to E flat. So if you don't want the song to sound, pitched up, you can correct it to E flat. I don't personally know how to do that part because I've never had to do it. I've always just went up and set it down. But there are some songs that it's probably better to go to a flat pitch than rather than up higher. So this is just an example on how to pitch correct it up. There's more info on how to pitch correct it down there. So once you have your tab and your audio, just go ahead and open the eof.exe here from the folder you dumped out. I would recommend making shortcuts and stuff for this, place it on your desktop or pin it to the taskbar or on the start menu, whatever. So you can't really do a whole lot without starting with a music file, but the first thing we're going to do is go to Preferences here, File Preferences, and then Preferences. And you can just copy this. Most of these are default anyway, but you want to make sure you check this here. The new notes are made 1 millisecond long. And what that means is when you place a note down, if you don't have this checked, it'll add a little tail to it, and it looks really stupid in game. And if you never turn this on, there's going to be a bunch of like tailed notes flying around, and it's not going to look good. And then the color set, change this to Rocksmith. That way it's got more familiar colors to you. And I'm pretty sure all this other stuff is just default. So once you do that, you just go up here to File, New, and then get your audio file. It supports OGG, MP3, and WAV. Just make sure you get a good audio file, please, because you don't want to download like YouTube audio or something and it's just awful. Sometimes it's all you can do, especially like new songs that come out, but you want to try and get the highest quality audio you can. So I always get at least 320 kilobyte MP3 files. You want to at least get 256, and 192 is like the bare minimum, but I always try and get 320. So you would just fill this out here with your info. If you got a good MP3 with metadata on it, it'll auto fill this out for you. And then you can do create new folder. This puts it in the EOF directory, or I always do this. This is use the source audios folder. So I create a folder, with the tab and the audio in it, and I just do this, and it just places everything in the same folder. That way I don't have to worry about it. And then use existing folder. It just lets you browse. So always do use source audios folder. Unless you want to run everything out of EOF directory, then I guess do that then. So here you just encode the audio. 320 is what we got, and I wouldn't recommend going below 192, but I would try and at least get 320 or 256 if you can. And this is converted from the FLAC file I bought from their Bandcamp, so I know it's a good audio file. So once you get EOF going, or you get in here and you can start messing with stuff, you can go to Edit and then Grid Snap, and make sure you turn this on. Make sure you turn it to something, because I think it's off by default. You want to always turn this to something, because it makes it to where the notes will snap to a grid like perfectly, rather than when it's off, you're just free balling it. Like if you put a note here, you can't like exactly snap to this line here. Like it'll always miss unless you're like very, very on point with it. So you want to always go up here and change your grid snap. I keep mine kind of high, but as you can see, it like perfectly snaps to a grid. And you can also show the grid with Shift G, and you can see how it's moving along it here. And then I just use a higher one because I get more of a finer snap. And then another important first step is you go up here to Song, Track, and then make sure this is set to real guitar, because I think by default it may put you on part guitar, and this is for like Guitar Hero, so this won't even let you render out a chart, I don't think. So just always go to the real guitar or real bass, because this will give you the options to make charts for Rocksmith. So just make sure you're using these real paths here. So another thing you want to do is go up here to Track, Rocksmith, and then remove difficulty limit. I think this may revert back. The main thing is if if it shows up as easy, medium, expert, hard, it doesn't really matter. You just can't use this BRE path here because it doesn't render out a XML file. I honestly don't even know what this is used for. I'm assuming it's something like Frets on Fire or Guitar Hero. So just if you do come across these, just make sure you don't use this BRE path, but you pretty much should go up here to Track, Rocksmith, remove difficulty limit, and this will actually allow you to use this fourth one, and it'll actually count. But normally you don't want to have multiple on these because this is for dynamic difficulty, I believe. So you could use these to import other tabs onto, which I'll show you here in a second. But you want to make sure you delete what's on the other ones, because I think it always goes with this higher number here. So for example, if you you did your chart on 0 here, and then you accidentally left a piece of a tab on number 4, it'll take number 4 and render it out as a chart, and it won't show your notes on 0. So you got to make sure they're all clear except for the one you've been doing your chart on. So just keep that in mind as well. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and go over some basic hotkeys and uses and stuff. So the very first hotkey, as soon as you get your audio in, F5. This shows your audio file. It's like a visual of your audio basically, and you'll use this to make sure it's in sync and everything. This is required basically because there's no shot you're tabbing it like this, which is just dark. There's no way. So you gotta have this on at all times. And then if you want to place notes, you can just use the right click on the mouse and you can just dump them on whatever string. Just hover over it and click wherever. And then the classic on every program, Control Z. This fixes all of your mistakes, as you can see here. And then Control R is to redo. However, you only get one per Control Z. So, for example, I can Control Z, delete that note. I can Control R to bring it back. But if I Control Z a bunch, I can't. I can only do one Control R. So I'm pressing it. It's just not. It only works once per Control Z. So keep that in mind. You basically only get one screw up. And then if you want to change the value of a note, you can click on it, and then you can press Control on the keyboard, hold that, and then move the mouse wheel up or down, and you can see it'll change the note here. And then you can also press Control 1 through 0, which will be 1 through 10, or Control F1 through F12, and that's 11 through 22. There's no hotkey for 23 to 24 that I know of, so keep that in mind. You'll have to manually put that in. And then the most common way you're probably going to end up changing notes is you just click on the note and then press N on the keyboard, and this will bring up the note menu here, and then you can actually, change it to whatever you want. It also gives you all the options here that, you can apply attributes to it, like palm mute, slides, all that type of stuff. All of this pretty much is also accessible under this note menu here. You just have to go find it. There's some things that don't have hotkeys, though, so you may have to go through this menu to do some things. But yeah, just press N and then you can change it to wherever you want. And you can also change the string. So if I didn't want it on this string, I can just go ahead and put it there. Yeah, you can just change it directly in there too. So if you want to change one note to, like a chord or something, you can just do it here. It also wouldn't hurt to go up here to track Pro Guitar and then set number of frets / strings, because sometimes this can change on you. So make sure this is set to 24, and then you're on 6th string, obviously. And then you can do your, you can go past 24 or go past 22 up to 24. So like a lot of other programs, you can do Control and Shift click. If you don't know what those are, basically if you hold Control on the keyboard and click notes, you can select, in between. So if I want to select like these notes here, I can select this one, hold Control, and then select these, and then you can apply stuff to all of them basically. So it just highlights what you held Control and clicked on. If you want to Shift click, you click the first one and then you just click the last one while holding Shift, and it highlights everything in between. So first, last note, and then everything between. So then you can like mass update notes. Definitely be careful with this because you can easily screw it up. I always like to deselect notes as well, so I always make sure that I click off of something in this little blank space here. Because for example, like if you're control clicking and you're like adding your palm mutes or whatever, and then you like click on something else, and then all of a sudden it like undoes what you just did because you didn't deselect it. This program's really bad about that. Sometimes it'll leave stuff selected on you, so always make sure to click off. You can see like these notes here, they're kind of white highlighted, and then I click off into some blank space and it unhighlights them. So I always do that after I edit a couple notes. I'll change this and then click off, and I just keep doing that to make sure I don't screw anything up. And then if you want to add sustain to notes, so add these little tails here, you can just move the mouse wheel up, and you can also use the brackets on the keyboard, which is next to P, and you can also use this as well, but the mouse wheel is easier. And then make sure you had your little 1 length on here, because if you have, even like a 2 on here, it'll have a little tail on it and it'll look really bad in game. So always make sure your lengths are set to 1 on your new notes here. The biggest hotkey of them all is Control S, save. You want to always save after everything you do in this program, because let me tell you something, it is not scared to crash on you. It will crash over literally anything. So always save after any change you do on this, because if you use Control Z a lot too, it'll crash like so fast. So always make sure you save your progress on this, because it will crash on you, trust me. So you just go up to File, Save. If you don't want to press Control S, you also press F2 to save as well. So 100% save everything you do on this. So when navigating our little timeline here, you can use the arrow keys, left, right, and then you can, move, and you see everything centers around this little green bar in the middle of the screen here. But the most important part is page up and page down the keys. These will snap you to the next bar. Some people just use page up and page down to navigate the whole time. I like to use the arrow keys, and I'll just kind of snap. So I have kind of both my hands out on the keyboard, and I just move here. Because when you're moving around like with this, I wouldn't say it's impossible. It's really hard to land on a bar. So you would just page down here, and then we're at the next bar, ready to go. And standard program, you can Control C, Control V, which is copy and paste. So if you want to get your perfect snap here, you page up to this, and then you just Control V to paste it, and then there you go. So it's online perfectly now. So there's a million hotkeys for this program, but those are just some of the basic ones. You can just look up the README on in the EOF folder, and then also I think there's on the GitHub. There's the README on there as well, so you can just look through for all the hotkeys. But that's just some of the super basic ones for right now, and we'll definitely go over more later. So basically, we're ready to hop in to start charting here. So the first thing you want to do always go up to Song Leading Silence, and then add your 10 seconds of silence here. So this is in milliseconds. Always just keep it on this here, and then change this to 10,000. So 10,000 milliseconds is 10 seconds. And then click re-encode here. Never click the stream copy because it'll make the audio get out of sync. I don't even know why it's an option in here. And then since you don't have anything to adjust, you can just leave this check. But this would be like if you wanted to add without moving the bars, which you don't want to do that anyway. So, and then it'll just ask you to re-encode your audio again. You just select whatever option you put the first time. So now we got this big long thing of silence here. And this just gives it time, like when you load into the game, because some people will have really slow computers, and actually, makes it to where it doesn't start like within a second or something on theirs. You pretty much, you want to always move this first beat here controls like the whole chart. You see, like if I move this, everything moves. So if you had like your tab on here, you can move the entire thing back with this. So you could use that to your advantage a little bit. But the first thing you want to do is you basically just move your first bar to your first note of the song. So this is just where you use your ears. And then you want to turn on the metronome, which is M, which you should always use one of these. And then you basically just start trying to figure out the BPM of the song. So the song's quantized, and it uses a click and all that. But it's I have the tab that has the BPM properly in it. And this is where it can get a little tricky, because sometimes there's songs like some black metal songs or something where they didn't like quantize it or anything, or it's not like they didn't use a click, and it's just all over the place. So at that point, you just want to get like a BPM tapper program, like on the website somewhere, and then just tap your space bar to the BPM and try and figure it out. But a lot of you can just move these bars here. But basically, you would just open your tab and then check the BPM on it, and you can just click on this first one here and get a beat, BPM, and then change, and then set this to whatever. So 235 on this one here, and you just basically go through and do all that. So I'll show you an example of a song where you got to figure it out without a tab, and then you can kind of go based off that how you're supposed to do it. But normally you can just follow the tab, and if it's a good tab, it'll line up every time. Just find out which bar it happens on, and then just go change it. Alright, so this is a song I did a while back. It's Cannibal by Static X. So as you can see, we're going to try and figure out the BPM here without using my tab that I made. So I always try and match the peaks of the audio. So you see like these little tip tops here, it's kind of peeking out. This is where the drums are hitting. Usually it's like a cymbal or a kick or something. So you can use this to figure out what's going on. So it starts default 120, and this is just one of those things you need to like learn how to count. So if this is 4/4 obviously, so you can move these around to match up. So we'll kind of listen and see. So 1 2 3 4 1. So we would go here, and we can turn the time signature on too. So let's do this again. So 1 2 3 4 1. So this bar has already hit right here, and you can see as the little top part here, it's barely going. I like to put it a little bit before, and you can see back here on these peaks, it's kind of a tad bit behind them. You want to do like a millisecond behind it. You don't want it to be like, you can have it a little bit closer on top of it. You don't want it to be like right on top of it though, or like in front of it, because it can go out of sync. But you can see here, we're kind of matching the peak. But back here, we're 159.47. So it's probably 160. So we can go up here to BPM, or you can go up to beat, BPM change, and then set this to 160. And then now we'll, using our metronome on the keyboard, always use one of these. Press M on the keyboard, and then now we can listen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you get the idea, and then you just kind of scroll through and make sure it's still in sync. Your peaks are matching up here. Go a little bit later in the song. Right here it's still, the peaks are matching. You can get a little bit more detail. Sometimes I go out at like a tad bit and you kind of like move it forward just a little bit there. I don't think, this one, it doesn't really need that, but it adjusts everything behind it. So when you do move forward a note like that or a beat like this, keep in mind, everything behind it's affected. So it's going to change to like, it's probably not going to be 160 anymore. It's probably like 159 point something. Yeah, so 159.99, which not that big of a deal. But you want to do this first before you put your tab in, especially because some tabs will freak out if you don't have like the BPM set properly, and the tabs don't import the BPMs, so you always want to go through and make sure you get your BPM set first. And you want to probably do the time signatures too. This one's all 4/4, so you would just basically look at your tab and reference, time signature happens on bar 12. But you can also import time signatures from the guitar profile, which I'll show you once we import our tab here. But basically we're just going to make sure this is, all still good. But you can see like these lines are perfectly matching up with our little peaks here. So this is how we know we're doing it right. So, you can see like it's peaking out, the lines matching, okay. And we just keep, play it again. I think it goes halftime right there, but you get the idea. You can keep the same BPM the whole time, it's fine. Yep, so 100% in sync there. Another thing you can do is you can anchor beats. So what this means is it creates this little red arrow here, so you can see, like I'll click on this one and press A on the keyboard, and this anchors the beat. So now anything before it won't be affected. So you can use this, especially if you got some wacky BPMs. You can pin a beat before it and then move up here, and then you can keep the previous one here, and you can adjust, and it'll keep that exact same beat there. So that's just a little thing you can use to make sure you got your beats set in stone, basically. Because if you get a song that's really hard to keep time on, you need to make sure you anchor your beats. That way because if you move up here, it's going to screw everything up behind it. So you want to, before you do your little move up here, you can anchor this beat here. That way it doesn't screw up everything behind it. So it's A on the keyboard, and then to deselect it, I think it'll go up here to beat and delete anchor, and then that'll get rid of it. But yeah, there's no hotkey for that, unfortunately. So yeah, just keep that in mind as well. So I'm going to show you a cool little trick for people that either know they have like a perfect guitar profile or they transcribed it themselves. So in Guitar Pro 8, you can go up here to track and then add audio file, and then it'll add your little audio file down here, and you can sync it up with these little bars. I actually like syncing it up with Guitar Pro more, because when you zoom out, you get a lot better detail. Like it's easier to see where the peaks and the audio are. Right here, it's hidden right on this, so it's a lot better to do. But what you can do is you can go here to this, once you set your sync, move your bars and all that, and get it synced up perfectly, like on this one here. You would click this little settings icon and then go to create score tempo automations from sync points, and this, it'll make the tab look kind of ugly, but you're not going to be worried about it anyway. But it'll put the little BPM changes here on the tab where they happen at, and then you can go up here to file, export MIDI, and then we can dump it in our folder here. So we'll do that, and then now we can go to editor on Fire and load it up. So now you go to file, import MIDI, and then you can put your thing in there, and now it pulls over all of the sync points from the tab. So now you can see it's like perfectly on these lines here. And let's see, let's keep going, maybe find another tempo change. Yeah, so 240. So this will actually import your BPMs, but you have to make sure you 100% sync this up in Guitar Pro. We'll take a listen to make sure, just with the metronome. Yep, sounds in sync to me. So you can also do this as well. You may have to do this before you do your leading silence. I think it tries to do it on the very first beat, so you want to make sure you do this before your leading silence. Yeah, there's just a quick little way to get your BPMs imported from Guitar Pro. This is actually a really helpful tool if you sync your audio up with Guitar Pro down here. So I've done this on a few of my tabs. Usually I'm doing songs that are like quantized and matched up to a click and everything. So normally it's pretty easy to just go through and set a couple of them. But for songs with multiple tempo changes that are a little bit more difficult, you can go through here and do it in Guitar Pro. It's a little bit easier to sync it up in Guitar Pro and then just dump it out. But if you get a tab that happens to have all the BPM changes, it seems like it's correct, you can try this out and see if the BPM matches, and maybe save you a little time. Just always go through with your metronome and listen and make sure you got the right thing going. So once you made sure everything's in time, BPMs are set, and your little peaks are matching up here, the audio peaks are matching with the little bars here, that way it's in sync. And then you did your time signatures if you wanted to. So here we can just go ahead and import our tab. We'll do our leading silence here. I did it earlier, but it took it away because I did something else, so we'll act like I already had the leading silence here. Alright, so you want to go ahead and import your tab, or you can just start chatting it out and manually putting your notes down too. That's always an option if you're doing your tabs in Editor on Fire, which Godspeed if you do that. But I would recommend tabbing in Guitar Pro and then just dumping your tabs in here, because Guitar Pro is a lot better with notation and stuff than on this. It's a lot easier to figure out. So to import a tab, you can press F12, or you can go to File, Import, and then Guitar Pro, and then you got to make sure it's a GP5 or I think a GP3 or 4, but it can't be a GP or a GPX. And then it'll ask here if you want to import your time signatures. You can just click yes, and this will import. If it's got any weird time signatures, it just puts them on where the bars hit. So I always click yes here unless it screws something up, and you just Control Z and do it again. And then this part here, so it's asking if you want to import these section markers. What this means is on Guitar Pro, we'll pull this tab up. So our tab here, if you see across the top, it's got the sections like A 0 seconds, B 14 seconds. So it's asking about these, and you don't want to import these mainly because if it's got numbers in it, especially, it will like break in Rocksmith. So I always click no. It's not even worth risking. So I just always click no on this, and then you would pick your path in your Guitar Pro. So let's do left guitar on this one, and then now you can see it pulled all our notes in here. So we can turn on the claps with C. This will make the notes clap, and you can tell if they're in sync or not. So we'll just take a listen real quick. So it sounds pretty in sync with the drums to me, and sounds like it's in sync with the guitar. So since I did the BPM setup and everything perfectly, the tab lines up perfectly. So this is why you want to make sure you do your BPMs and all that first. And then the very first thing you want to do is highlight all of these notes here with Control A, and then just drag your mouse wheel down a few times. You can see now it's creating some space here, and just create some space between these notes, because you don't want all of them running into each other, because they look god awful in game. I'll put some pictures up making fun of some people, but yeah. And you want to make sure you have your grid snap on kind of high. You don't want to have it like a quarter, because it'll pull them all the way back. But just make sure there's a little bit of space between these notes here. So a massive thing to look at is if you notice, all these notes at some point are hitting on a beat, and it basically just means the notes are on time. So there always has to be notes hitting these bars at some point. So if you got some section like this, where like you see all these are like kind of off a little bit, and they're like never hitting the bar, and they're just off like this, that means something screwed up. So these notes always have to hit on a bar at some point. So this is where you would want to rethink what tab you got, or just make sure it's aligned properly. I can show you a little trick to make sure if they're off by a tad bit, you can fix it. But in this instance, this would be something you'd have to like sit here and manually move them back. But this is where you want to, make sure all of your notes are actually hitting on a grid, which I purposely move these off for the video, but you can see like the rest of these, like it's like perfectly on grid here. Like, there's some notes in between beats, but it's actually like perfectly in between the beat, and then it's hitting on the lines, making sure it lines up with the timing of the song. So you always want to check for this as well, and you can just disable your F5 to get the black background. That makes it a lot easier to see if some are off by a lot. But if you got like a perfect tab, everything should line up. Everything's hitting on these lines here on beat. So always check for this, because some crappier tabs can cause this to happen if they don't have the right BPM and it imports wrong. So always check for notes that are off the lines. So usually what causes notes to get knocked off like this here, where they're like slightly off, is if you change the BPM and then import a tab, because it's 0.70 or whatever now instead of 150. So it'll import these notes like a tad off sometimes, or if you change it, later. So if you see this section of notes, there's like a couple that are just like barely off a little bit. So you can actually fix these pretty easily. So you can just go here and click, shift click all of them. And this is if they're within like, a little bit of a note here, or the little bar here. If it's like massively off, then it may not work too well. But for a section like this is perfect. So you would just go up here to note, grid snap, and resnap to this grid. And you see it perfectly put all of them onto the grid, and they're all lined up now perfectly. I would recommend doing this in sections and not like on the whole chart. Like, I wouldn't recommend doing Control A and doing that, because sometimes it could screw it up. You also want to make sure your grid snap is decently high here, because if it was like a 16th or something, it may not work too well. We can double check it just to make sure, but I've had some where it like moves them way off if you have it like at a higher or a lower one. So we'll try this one here. There's also a hotkey. It's Control Shift R. But see, now you see it puts them in like triplets, and so you don't want that. So that's why you want to make sure you have your grid snap kind of high. So this may take some fooling around with, but this is just to show you that you can snap these notes to the grid if they're off a little bit like this. It's not too bad. So I would recommend checking this as well if you got a sketchy tab, because sometimes this can happen. But I'll always recommend doing it in sections, because it can screw up the whole tab if you end up highlighting all of it and doing it. But this is just a quick example of what it can do. So we're at the part now where you can start stitching together pieces of a tab to create one chart. So this has a lot of arrangements on it, so I can create a pretty decent lead from this. So basically you would go through and make sure all this is lining up. You did your BPMs and all that, but just double check with the claps and everything, make sure it's good to go. So we can, it's pretty easy to tell if it's in time with these songs that like heavy staccato stuff in it, because they just mute and like it lines up perfectly with the drums like that. So you always just want to make sure it's in sync first before you start doing anything else. So you can use these little tracks across the top here. Don't use this BRE path, remember. You're supposed to do the remove the difficulty limit thing, but so here we can go to this track here, and then we can import another tab. So we can you can click no on all this since we already did it before. And so for example, we'll do lead guitar, and this is the left one. So now you got across the top you can have your little sections here. And then I recently learned this from Dell. So shout out to Dell for this one. You can press Shift Enter and it'll pull up across the bottom here like a preview of the one you were just on. And then I think you can use Control Enter to go to the other. Like you can swap back and forth here. So now you can see I'm on 1 up here and then 0 down here. So that way you don't have to keep clicking back and forth. You can get a comparison down here. You can't copy and paste from it though, but this is mainly just like so you're not going blind. You can see what notes are coming up. This is really helpful. So yeah, Shift Enter to do that, and then you can Control Enter to go between the little difficulties here. So you can do, we can do another example. Throw more on here, and then Control Enter, and now I can go between, I'm on 0, and then down here I can go to 2. So you can see it's moving around, and I can see what's coming up here. Or you could also just click across top too. It's also an easier way. But now you basically just find your parts where you need your little leads at. So here's an example. So just like a little radio effect part. We'll see if we can find like some lead stuff. Yeah, so you can see this is like a rhythm here. So um, what I usually do first is if the chart is, or if the song is mostly like the rhythm majority of the time, and then lead just happens to be like these little licks and stuff, I would actually make the rhythm chart first. So you want to go through and do all your polishing stuff before you get to this part for the cloning, which I'll go ahead and show you the cloning just so you can know what to do. But you can do it before the polishing, but you're gonna have to polish like a different arrangement. So I'd recommend going through, watch the other half of this video to learn about the polishing process. But I would do all that first, and then once you're done, you can go to song track, and then find you another arrangement here. So you can go to part real guitar. You can go up to track and then clone, and then from track, and then you can find your track here that you were just on. And now you see it clones like literally everything. It cloned all the stuff I had before. It clones your tones, it clones hand shapes, it does literally everything. So you always want to do this if you can, if you're trying to copy a chart. And then now, since in this song, it's basically the rhythm the entire time. There's like little random like licks and stuff. So now you can just go through and find your little parts that you want to add in. So we got we got this little thing here. So we can shift click this and then go back to our 0. And usually, you want to make sure you delete the notes. Obviously, if it's like this, you want to delete these first, and you just find out where it hits, so you can page up to get to your bar, the perfect snap, remember? And then we just copy paste, and there you go. Now get your little. Yep. Then you basically just go through and find your little parts you want to stitch together, and just copy and paste, and then make a good lead chart here. So my charting philosophy is to always make them as fun as possible, or at least lead rather. So lead, you always want to make that as fun as possible for people, because you don't want to be an idiot and just like import this path here and send it, and then you got like a minute of silence and some random tremolo, and then you got to wait like 5 minutes to play something else. Like, it's stupid. Don't do that. You want to make it as fun as possible for everybody, including yourself if you're playing. And a lot of the time, it's honestly better to leave the rhythm sometimes and put leads in. So I've seen a lot of people will like replace this sick riff here with like something like this little tremolo here. Like, you just tremolo pick the entire time. Like, I don't want to do that. I want to play this dirt nasty riff at the start here. See, that sounds so much better to play than these little tremolo notes here. Like, I don't want to sit here and strum. Screw that. I want to play some sick riffs. So definitely take that into consideration. What would the player want? What would like 99% of people want to play on this part? Most likely not tremolo, I'll tell you that. So yeah, keep that in mind. So you want to make sure you define your arrangements too. So you want to go up here to track, Rocksmith, and then set your arrangements. So we just clone this track so it's a lead, but it also clones the arrangement too. So if you set this other one to rhythm, it would clone over rhythm. So you need to go make sure you change that to use Rocksmith, and this is how you get them to show up differently in game, obviously. So make sure you set the arrangements, and then once you're done with these, you want to make sure you get rid of all the notes on these other ones, these other difficulties here. So you would just click on them, Control A, and delete, and then so if we'll do tech notes later, but say there's I'm gonna throw this on here just to show. So you see this little parentheses, that means there's tech notes on it. So if you like delete and then there's still this parentheses, it means there's still some hidden notes on it. So you can press F4 on the keyboard and you can see these little boxes here, but you probably won't see them. But you can just do Control A, delete on that, and now you see the little stars gone. So now it got rid of all the notes. So basically, we'll act like we got everything done on that. So just make sure you delete all of the notes off of the other tracks across the top here, because it'll go with the higher one. Remember, like I said earlier. So if you dumped a tab like here and then didn't delete it, it's going to render this part out. So the 0 is just not even going to work. So you want to make sure you delete all of these here. That way you're left with just one here. So you can also clone over the bass arrangement as well. So you can go to real bass and then you can clone and it'll just basically turn it into a guitar. But you can do that with the bass arrangement. However, you just want to make sure it's not actually set as bass up here, because that actually tries to mark it as bass in game, which apparently people do with rhythm. PSA for people that don't know how to transcribe bass or how bass works, it doesn't play the exact same thing as a guitar most of the time, which apparently people will just copy the rhythm over to bass and then set this to the bass arrangement. They think it's good to go as a bass chart, so please don't do that. You know, actually know how to tab bass or get a bass tab. Don't actually just copy the rhythm over, because I don't even know why you do that in the first place, but apparently people do it. So yeah, don't actually try and make a bass arrangement out of the rhythm guitar path. That's not a good idea. But in this chart, for instance, there's no bass tab, so I just clone over the bass arrangement because it turns it into lead anyway. It still says part real bass up here, but if you go to import it, it'll show up as like alt lead if I go up here and change it to alternate lead. So if you, like these charts for example, I do like alt lead, alt rhythm, and lead and regular lead, and it's kind of nice to keep them next to each other. So like I do rhythm on this one here. Oh god. I go up to track, guitar, so this is rhythm, and I put lead up here, and I do rhythm down here and lead down here. So this is assuming I don't have any bass, but yeah, it's kind of nice to keep them grouped together. That way I kind of know where they're at. So that's a little tip for cloning stuff. So a good way to keep your tracks organized, you can go up to track and rename, and then you can just name it like lead, and now you see it changes it up here. So when you go to song track, you can see across the top that it renames it, so we can go here and, you know, track, rename, and bass. And then now when we do our shift, or control shift up and down, you can see across the top lead here, so lead, part real guitar. So you can make it a habit of, you know, always setting your lead on real guitar and then rhythm on real guitar 22 and stuff like that. So it's just a neat little thing you can do to, you know, not get lost. I just recently figured this out, even though it's literally right in front of my face, but it helps a lot because I get confused a lot because I have to go up here, track, Rocksmith, and be like, oh, okay, I'm on alt lead, and I could just go up here and rename it to alt lead. So this is a nice little thing so you don't get confused if you're doing a lot of arrangements like I do sometimes. Another little thing you can do with your arrangements is you can do a control shift up and down, and if you see across the top here, it's moving, you know, from real part, you know, real bass to real guitar. So you see it's moving back and forth. So you can do this kind of quickly to go back and forth. So yeah, control shift up and down arrow keys, and that'll let you swap between your paths pretty fast. So you can edit your arrangements very quickly doing this. So this is just a little hotkey trick as well. And then another thing is tones. So you can add your tone changes. The command is control shift T, and then you can basically just put in, you know, like distortion. You don't have to put like a crazy name. I'm kind of lazy. I just put dist, and then like clean, I'll put, you know, clean. So another big thing with tones is you don't actually want your tones to apply on a bar or a note. So for example, if I got like this here, you don't want your tone to hit on this note here, like exactly on it. You want it to go like a little bit behind it, or not. You don't want it to hit on a bar either. You want it to be like completely off of something, because in game it'll make like a pop noise. You may have heard some charts. There's like a Trivium chart where they pitch shift like every 1 second, and it it happens on the note itself, and then you just hear like a bunch of pops the entire time. Like it sounds so bad. So you want to, you know, make sure you get your tone not on top of a note. You want to put it like a little bit before it. So say for example you're right up on it. You can do control shift page up and page down to move like a grid snap back. So since I keep mine on 164, it's, you know, I can go very slightly back, but you just want to like something like this. You don't want to put it right on top of this note. You want to go like back a little bit. That way you don't land on top of the note with your tone, because it, you know, it'll create that pop sound. So keep that in mind. Don't put it on top of a bar here or on top of a note. You want to put it behind a note. That way it switches cleanly in game, because that's how you get those constant pop noises if you apply them on a bar or note. So keep that in mind as well. Always keep them away from notes or bars here. So there's a 4-tone limit. You can recall them, you know, as many times as you want. So I could switch between clean and distortion all day, but I can only have 4 unique tones on the chart. So keep that in mind. You can't just add a ton of tones that aren't, you know, if it goes over 4. So just basically go through, set your tones. So another neat little hotkey that'll help out a lot is a Shift F11. It changes across the top here. You can see your tones and fret hand positions. So normally it'll probably be at fret hand positions like this, like you'll see the numbers, but you can press Shift F11 and it'll show your sections like right here, and you can switch to tones. So this is just a quick little way to hop between, you know, seeing what your tones and fret hand positions are. You'll probably get used to using this way later, but this helps a lot because normally if you don't know that hotkey, you gotta go up here to File, Preferences, and then change this part here. So keep this one in mind because it helps a lot. So before you exit out, it'll make you try and set the default tone if you got more than one. It'll warn you if you got just one that, you know, it'll only just have one tone basically. It kind of wants you to have two to set one as a default, but you can get away with just using one. Like if it's a song that has distortion the entire time, you can just leave it and you just assign it in the DLC builder and it'll be fine. But you do have to set one as default. It'll ask once you go to save. It'll be like there's no default tone, and you can just click do you want to fix this? Yes, and then set it there. But to actually add it, you would go up here, track, Rocksmith, tone change, and then names, and then here you can set your default tone. So you just click the one you want and click default, and it'll prompt you for this when you go to save if you forget to do it. So make sure you do this as well, because this is basically just assigns the tone when the chart first starts basically. And if you also want to check, the tones on the chart, you can go to track, Rocksmith, tone change, and then list, and this will show, the times and everything, so you can seek to and, find out where they're at in the song. And then you can also get to that other screen here, like you can go to edit, or you can change the tone name here if you accidentally screw one up. And you can click names here, and this will take you to that default. You can also get to this list from the default tones 1, 2, just click list here on the right side and you'll be good to go. So there's just a little overview on tones here. Alright, so before we get to the polishing part, if you see a yellow box anywhere on your chart, these notes are broken and need to be fixed. You can skip to the part of the video. I'll have chapters on it, but it's the part for slide into notes. But a quick rundown, I'll go way more in depth later, but these notes here are off a fret. Do not leave these because you will look like an idiot importing these and just leaving them like this. So you want to get rid of this yellow box. So basically you always want to look at this number down here. So the red number is actually the fret it's supposed to be. So keep that in mind. Watch that part of the video at least. It's called slide into notes, and it's the slide into notes in Guitar Pro. So it'll be like this here where you're supposed to slide into 7. I made this up just to show this as an example. But it's basically saying you slide into 7, but you pretty much always cross-reference your tab with your chart here. But big warning on this: if you see yellow boxes, you need to keep watching until the slide into notes part. So I think we're at the point now where we're going to start polishing up the chart. I'm going to go ahead and put this in a little earlier. You can go ahead and do this if you have all of your tabs, imported and arrangements set and everything. But we need to make this leading silence apply here. So if you remember, we added our 10 seconds earlier, and what we need to do to make this actually apply is you would go based off your time signature here. So you want to go full bar back. So for example, 4/4, 1 2 3 4 1. So we'd make this 2 line up here. So you can go up to beat and then push offset back, and then you just keep doing that until your number 2 hits here. So if it's 3/4, your bar would be right here. So you basically make it line up to where the big white bars are on, like it was normal basically. So now you got your full bar of chart here that's empty, and then you go to this first note here and then press Shift P on the keyboard, and then you type in count, COUNT, all capital here, and then just press OK, and that's it. And then I would probably do this before adding sections into everything. You could do it last if you want to. I think it'll move your section back though. But the reason I have you do this later is because if you did it early on and then you imported a tab and did your time signatures, it'll import it all the way back here, and then they won't line up with the audio. So this is why I have you do this kind of later. So you want to do this after you do all your polishing, or if you made sure you got your arrangements set up properly and everything, and you're not going to import any more tabs. But this is how you actually do it according to how Ubisoft does it. So this is how you add your leading silence, and it's not actually 10 whole seconds. It's more like 5 to 7 seconds, but this just gives the game like time to load sections and everything. So this is how you do it, how Ubisoft does it. All right, so I think it's time to start talking about the polishing of the chart. So a lot of people don't add polishing to their charts, and it just looks awful, and yeah, basically nobody wants to play it. So I would definitely recommend watching this part of the video for maybe some tips and tricks. Maybe somebody doesn't know something, maybe you're an expert, I don't know. But the first thing I like to do is staccato. That is where you mute the note, basically. So for example, right here, so obviously you can tell they're just muting the note there. So you want to, for me personally, you don't have to do this, but I personally like to do this, and everybody I make play my charts likes that I add these. So you can use the accents to show that the note is staccatoed. Unfortunately, there's no notation in Rocksmith for staccato. Even in Rocksmith Plus, they don't even have it, which is stupid. So I use accents. I feel like nobody really uses accents where they're supposed to be used for anyway, so I use it as staccato indicators pretty much all the time. You can do accent by Control Shift A, and you see it'll add this little, I think it's a greater than sign. I failed math, so you just basically check here, and then you can also mass select with, you know, Shift and Control. So I can click here, Shift click, and then Control Shift A, and it'll highlight all of them. So now in game, it'll have a big glowy box around it, and then most people will see that and be like, okay, I need to staccato the note here, so we can make sure, you know, these are actually staccato notes. See right there, they staccato it, so you can add one there. Staccato it again, and then these two. You can kind of get a feel for when it's going to happen based on the spaces between notes, which, I mean, realistically, people playing it in-game will probably see that big space and assume it's muted, but it's nice to give them a little helping hand to show, that way they can play it right the first time. So you just go through and find your little staccato notes, and I'm just not going to do all of them for the video, but you get the idea. So, you know, you can add, I think this one has little sets of them, so you can do this. So for chord staccatos, I may have to find another chart I did to show this off a little bit more, but you can do the same thing where you staccato the last one, and then this will show one big chord box. So these hold notes don't even really matter. You can leave these extends here because in game it shows all as one chord box. So it'll just be the little X's until the note ends, which would be this one here. So I'll put a little picture on screen of a chord box basically to show that the extends don't even really matter. So you can just leave these here. You don't even have to worry about them half the time. But always, as long as there's no upcoming chord that's the same, then I just add an accent, and then it just makes it look clean in game. Okay, so chord staccatos get a little tricky sometimes. So I like to hand shape off some of them. However, there are some like this where the hand shapes can actually be, or like making the note actually appear as the chord could be a problem. So for example, this has a really weird like staccato pattern, so we can listen here. So very weird pattern there. So in this instance here, if I would have hand shaped these or made them crazy notes, they would appear as the chord again. So like it would be these four, and then it would show those like this starting chord again. So that seems like it's like so much of a pain because like this one will be accented and then this one won't be, so it'll be hard to like see. So I'll show a screenshot of what this specific section looks like in game, and you can see what the staccatos I did. You know, maybe that was the right call on this one, I think, because I'll also upload a picture of what it looks like with the way I normally do it. So you kind of gotta pick between which one you think looks better, because there's multiple ways of doing the chord staccatos. But I'll show you an example of one that looks like really clean for what I normally use it for, and you can look at those and see. All right, so this is what I would normally do, but since it's such a weird pattern, you can see I hand shaped these here. That way they're like contained in one little box in game, and I'll render this chart out and I'll show you the screenshot. It's kind of hard to read in game, so that's why the first one I did was way better. But normally, if it's not some weird pattern like this, it actually doesn't look too bad. If I had this here and then had this here and just like did this, but where it's got this like weird one in the middle, it makes the whole like pattern look weird. So you'll see what it looks like, and you can kind of tell from there. So here's an example of where I did the chord staccatos. So they basically, this here, they mute between. We can listen. So there's no real need for this box here. I just did it out of habit, I guess. But technically, where I hand shape these, so you can just click on control click or shift click them, and then you can just press control shift H on the keyboard, and this will make it to where it hand shapes. So basically it just forces these two chords into a box here, and then on the next one it'll start over. So this is how you can like section off chords and make it appear a little bit more clean in game. So for example, I basically just hand shaped each one of these, and it's like, okay, these two in this box, these two in this box, these two in this box, and then you add a little accent, and that way it kind of repeats the chord without just showing a big line of X's. So I'll show you what it looks like in game real quick. Alright, so I'm going to show an example of some of the staccato stuff I did on this chart here. So I showed the editor on fire before, where I hand shaped off the two boxes and then added an accent at the end. And then this is an example of what it looks like in game. And then there's a lot of staccato stuff after this as well. So I'm just kind of showing this off, but this is what it looks like in game. I personally think it looks pretty clean, but this is subjective. You don't have to hand shape off these boxes. You can just make them all one chord box and just highlight the ones you're muted on too. So we'll check this out. So you can see there's a lot of staccato stuff. So that's why I do the accents. That way, people playing this for the first time have a good idea of what to do. Which I mean, you don't have to do all this, but it's nice to do to help people out. A lot of people do a lot of different things. This is just how I chart personally. Just a fair warning, you can use accents for staccatos if you want, or you can actually use them what they're supposed to be used for, like you actually accent the note on like the beat. But I only try and use it for one, maybe max two things in a chart, just because you don't want people to get confused. And I kind of make it like my signature thing, although people have done it before me. I know like Ramen and all them do that. So I try and establish that they're staccatoed in my charts. But if you actually make it a habit of using accents for different things, it may kind of throw people off. So you can do whatever you want in that sense. But really, I only use accent notes for staccato, and then for example, you can say, we'll just make up some weird scenario here that doesn't actually exist in the song, but you can say like in the middle of this chord, one of these is unpalm muted, and then there's just a bunch of X's and then like a little lit up box that you can like barely see. I always use accents to show that that's there, not that it's actually accented. Mainly just like if it's hard to see, I'll accent it basically. So I pretty much only use accents for staccato and notes that would be really hard to see otherwise. Like if there were a ton of X's around it, but this one was open, you probably wouldn't be able to see that in game unless you like paused it or something. So I always like to mention that as well. Alright, so another important thing we'll go over is slides. This is very important. So this is another chart I did a while ago. This is Track Star by Seda. It's a really good jazz fusion album. If anybody likes jazz fusion, it's like video game, like Mario Kart sounding jazz fusion. There's a lot of slide into notes and slides, so this is a good example for slides. So the biggest thing, if you notice these big yellow boxes right here, this means it's a slide into note in Guitar Pro. So I'll pull up in Guitar Pro and I'll show you what I mean here. Alright, so since this is an official tab, I don't want to like show all of it for out of respect for SATA, since you gotta pay for these, but you can see here this is a slide into note, so it means slide into 11 down the fretboard, or down from the lower part of the fretboard, but you can see it's a 9 and then you go into 11, so pretty much you slide from 9 to 11, or you would come in lower than that. So as you can see here, it changes the fret to one below. So pretty much you always look at this red number here, and this is the correct fret it's supposed to be. So this is always like the yellow box. 100% means it's the wrong fret. So always look at these and make sure you look at this number below, and this is the fret it's supposed to be. So this is the part where you decide if you want to actually make it a slide into, or if you just want to at least make sure it's the right fret. So bare minimum, if you're a lazy person and just don't want to do anything, then at least change it to the fret it's supposed to be. So you can press N on your note here and change it to 11. And then you got to get rid of the unpitched slide, which is Control U, and this will get rid of the slide there. And then now it's actually the correct fret. So this is the bare minimum. At least do this for all of your yellow box notes. So you can see this here, it's 12, so it's a slide into 12 from 11 basically. And just always look at these red notes here. This will tell you the real fret it's supposed to be. So bare minimum, make sure it's the right number, and then get rid of your unpitched slide in game. But yeah, that is probably the biggest thing, is with unpitched slides. And this, if you get tabs that have a lot of these, you 100% need to go through and fix all these. So definitely look through, and I picked this song for a specific reason because it has a lot of these. So this is a good one to show you that this happens a lot, and especially like jazz tabs, where they do a lot of slidey stuff. There's a lot of slides and stuff like that. So unpitched slides are the very first thing you want to take care of in your tab. And then, so that's just the bare minimum. What you're supposed to do is actually chart it as a slide into. So for example, this one here, this is a 15, but you slide in from 14, so from the lower part of the fretboard. Realistically, it's probably slid in from like 10, somewhere in here. Like, it's pretty rare they actually slide in from 14 to 15, but I wouldn't say it's a global thing, but like, if you just make it like a 14 slide into 15, people will know you're supposed to slide into the note. But if you want to make it as accurate as possible, you can find out which fret they slide in from, which you can go up here to edit and then playback rate and slow down, and you can find out generally the fret they come from. But usually it's kind of around the fret before. So like this one here where it's a 15, it's probably 12 and then slide into 15, I would assume. So you could do that. The easiest way to do that, I pretty much always just do the one fret slide, because it's easy just to indicate that, and pretty much everybody knows what it means. So for example, if we want to fix this slide here, so remember it's a 15, you slide in from 14, you just go up a little bit before the note and drop a note here, and then change it to 15. You do that however you want, and then you got to get rid of this yellow box here. So you press N on the keyboard to pull up your note menu, and just press Enter, and then you press Control U to get rid of the unpitched slide here. So Control U, and then just delete this number here, and then you create a slide by doing Shift N, which is link next, and this will basically just combine the notes together. And then you do Control up to indicate that it's a slide up to this fret. So you do Control down if you're going from 15 to 14, for example. So make it a 15. So now you see slide from 15, or slide from 14 to 15 with this here, and the little arrow means make it all one note. And then you just extend this here. So now if we listen, so you can see there's like a slide in note there. Realistically, it's probably actually like from 10 or so, but you can do like 11 or 12 to make it, you know, a little bit more realistic. So this is just use your ears at this point, and if you want to be a really good charter, find actually where they slide in from to make it really accurate, and then you just basically go through here and fix these up, and you know, slow it down, make sure you get it right. But this is what I do. So this one here, 15, remember this is actually supposed to be 15, but we slide in from lower. So dump your note here, change it to 15, get rid of your yellow box with N, enter. Don't have to do anything, just N, enter real fast. Do that in like a millisecond, and then Control U to get rid of your box or your unpitched slide, and Shift N, and then do your Control up, and then change it to 15, and there you go. And then you always want to add a little tiny tail to these notes if you can. This just makes it where the slide isn't like super abrupt, like it doesn't just end. And this will actually give you like a little indicator of like what fret it goes to, and you kind of like hold on for a second. It also helps in note detection too. So always add a little note length here. I like to keep it around like 20 or 30 if it's a shorter one like this one. Like this one probably just slides for a second, so we'll listen real quick. Yeah, so you can see just kind of slow. He doesn't really hold it that long, so you can maybe add like, I can maybe add a tiny bit more of a tail on it, but this is probably good enough in game. In game, the note distance is a lot shorter than it looks like in Editor on Fire, so I like to just add like a tiny little tail, and I would highly recommend doing that as well. Even on like this one here, you would want to add a little tail at least onto it. So we'll fix a couple more just as an example, and always make sure you do your little Control A and move your extends down. That way it doesn't look like garbage in game. So let's see. I kind of want to find one where it slides the other way. I think there's one towards the start that's like the opposite here. Yeah, so here's one where it's a slide down. This one you go from 10, or you go to 10 from 11. So this one you actually go the other way. But like we did on the other ones, you just put your note here and then change it to 10. And then so we're sliding from 11 to 10. Remember, always the red number is the real fret. And then you get rid of your box here, Control U to delete that, and then link next, and then Control down for this one because it's a slide down, and then put your 10 there, and then add a little tail onto it to make sure you get your good detection in game, and it actually makes it look pretty clean. And I'll put some pictures on screen of what they actually look like in game, and you can decide for yourself which one looks better. But basically, you just go through. I mean, it takes like 2 seconds once you learn how to get used to it. So right there, done. Already fixed that. Easy enough. This one here, bang it out. Add your little tail, and then already done, pretty much. So you see, it's pretty easy to do. Always do this. Do not skip this part. This is like the most important part. So make sure you fix these slide into, because I've played and seen so many charts where people just leave this, and this is a fret off. Like, and I know people don't play test their charts because of this, because there's no way you're playing this, and then you hit this fret right here, and you're like, oh, it sounds good. Like, no shot. So always fix this. Bare minimum, change it to the fret it's supposed to be. Even if you're too lazy to do slide in notes, just make sure it's the right fret. So go through your entire chart and fix all of these. The big yellow boxes every time means your note's wrong. So look at this red number here. Slide into 13 from 12. Add your note here, 13. Get rid of your box. Link next, slide up, and then there we go. Very simple. 100% do this always. Again, this is another part where you want to use your ears, because sometimes the slide into notes happen a little bit before. If the guitarist is like crazy good, they'll pretty much always be on beat. So sometimes the slide can happen a little bit before, so you kind of want to listen for that. So we'll maybe check this one and see if it happens before. So it's good to slide or change the playback rate to really low, and then we can see what it sounds like here. So that one happens on time. Let's see if we can find one that's off a little bit. So this note here, I mean, it probably, according to his little like keyboard in the back, the slide should happen like back here a little bit. So this is where you'd want to use your ears and make sure oh, okay, it kind of sounds like you slide from back here. So this one here, we can take a listen here. It's probably so unnoticeable that you probably wouldn't even like notice it anyway, but this is one of those things you want to check for, because sometimes the slides don't always happen on this bar. It may happen a little bit before, and then you land on your note right on this beat here. But in most instances in this song, the slide like happens on the beat itself, and then kind of it's so instant that it's like it's 64th note ahead that you like it's probably not even noticeable. But technically, according to this note here, like the little keyboard part, it starts ascending a little bit earlier. Let's see if we can. So technically, it's like back here. So you can hear like. So that's another thing. I just did that note as an example. I don't know if it's actually like that, but it's just one of those things I just want to let you know about. So you could maybe move it up a little bit. So yeah, that's just another thing I wanted to mention, to listen to the slide. It may not actually always all happen like right up here. Like as you can tell, it sounds way better to start back here than right up on this beat here. So you can tell it happens a little bit before this, so kind of want to adjust accordingly, because sometimes they don't actually happen on the beat, and it could sometimes be off a little bit. I'm going to try my best to go over regular slides. So the last thing we were doing was just those wrong fret slides, which are like unpitched slides. So I couldn't really find a good example of this in my charts. I'm sure I'll think of one right when I upload this too. But here's one that kind of shows what I'm talking about. So this note here, you see how it's like a 10 slide to 9. It doesn't. The problem with the game is it kind of just slowly shows a slide. So for example, if like we start, if it's like a crazy slide like this, but it's like you hold 10, but then you go to 9 at the end. If you just import a tab, it'll look like this here, and you would basically want it to be like, okay, I need to hold 10 until like right here, and then slide to 9. So you would actually put a note here, and then change that to 10, and you see how it's still linked. Just get rid of your slide here. You can just press Control down, and then now it's 10 linked to this other 10, and then here you can make your slide. So you do your Shift N to link next, and then Control up slide, or Control down on this instance here, and then so now it's like, okay, hold 10, and then when you get to this point, slide straight down to 9. Like this isn't actually the note, but you can do this to make shorter slides look really clean too. So for example, we'll go back to our start part here where it started at. So this is like a relatively slow slide, but we'll listen to the song and you can tell like he holds 10 for a second and then goes down. So you can tell like it doesn't just slowly slide from 10 to 9 because it's only a fret away. So what you would want to do here is you could put a 9 or a 10 here, and then get rid of this slide, and then slide this up to 9, or slide this down. I can't talk. So and then add your little tail here. So now in game, this will be like a little quick slide instead of just like a really slow slide, because it'll look really weird in game. I'll put an example of some of those on screen, and then you can tell, like, you can see what I'm talking about. Like, it makes the slide look a million times cleaner. But especially if you got like a really long slide, like for example, the one we did a minute ago where it's like slide like all the way down here, but you hold the note for a while. You would want to make it look like this here, where it's like a really long hold and then you slide. So this is definitely one thing you want to do to make it look as accurate as possible. So you don't want it to look like this, because in game it'll be like a really slow slide to the next fret and it'll look really weird. But it's even worse if it's like a slide to 3, because instead of holding 10, in game it'll show as like a 10 and it's like slowly sliding to 3 and it looks super funky. So you definitely don't want to do that. You would always make sure you want to have your link next note and then you slide to 3 at the very end. And this makes it look like super clean in game. This is how it's supposed to look. That's that's how it's played. So this is an example. That's what I was talking about, and I'll try and find some more examples to show you as well. Alright, so here's another chart I did where I got like a wacky slide that I've custom made. So I'm not 100% sure if this, it sounds, I don't hear any strums in this, so I think this is all like just one note and they just slide it down so we can listen here. I'm gonna turn my claps off. So you can tell like it's pretty much all like they just hold and they slide down twice. So you can see based on the logic here. Okay, hold, press, or like strum 10 here, and then hold all the way until this point, and then we slide down to 5. So you can tell it's like a slow slide down to 5. So really, I should have probably, well, this is how this is actually played. So this is right, but if you want to make it look really clean, you can add like another 10 here. We'll get rid of that and link this one, and then scroll down to 5 there. So link that. But that would make it like a really quick slide. So that's an example of like what it's supposed to look like in game. It doesn't, I mean, it's not that big of a deal on this one here because it's actually, this is how it's played. And then so you can tell like right here it's the same thing, but you can see all these little arrows. It means it's like combining the note in game. So I'll probably actually put this slide on screen so you can see what it looks like. And this one here, just follow the logic. So link this note to this note. Okay, this is a 10, slide down to 5 at this point. So hold 10 till this point, slide down to 5, hold 5 because we're linking this to the next 5. So hold this 5 until here, and then slide down to 2. And then here is an unpitched slide, so I linked it to this, and this is basically just like you hold the note until here, and then you slide down back to 12. I don't think this actually is in the song or not. You can like barely hear it. Let's see. Yeah. So you like barely hear it right there. You can hear him slide down to 12. So that's just an example of a wacky slide that I made, but this illustrates the point of what you're supposed to do with these slides here. So I'm just going to do a little quick thing on unpitched slides. So that's what these little black lines on the note means. It's an unpitched slide, and you can see the little thing here. It's like a little arrow with an 8 for this instance here. So basically you want to use these when there's no like identifiable like end fret, or you don't want to like actually have an ending fret. You just want it to kind of like end on something. So this just kind of looks for noise in game. Like it doesn't actually detect anything. Like as long as you play on that string, you may not even have to play on the string. You just play a note, and I think it counts it. This is mainly like for detection reasons and just in general. Like if you don't know, like for example on this song, they slide from 3 down to somewhere on the fretboard, and this is just one of those instances. So you can tell like they just slide down the fretboard. So this is one of those things where like it doesn't necessarily have to end on like 8. It can end somewhere, but they don't really like hold where they end at either. They just kind of slide and then let go. So that's one of those things, and that's mainly one of those things you would use for like where the start of a song where it's they do the you can do that as well. Or you just go from like 15 up to 3 or whatever. You don't have to mark 15 to 3. You can use unpitched slides. So like you can just press Control U and then change this to 15, and this will do a 3 to 15 slide like all the way down the fretboard, and it won't stop on 15. As long as you make some noise, it'll count that note. So you kind of want to use these wisely. I pretty much only use them for like sliding out of notes. So like if it's a 3 and then you like go down to 15 or something, but there's no like you don't end on 15, I would do an unpitched slide. So you kind of want to use those how you see fit, but they don't detect, or they're a lot more lenient on detection. So you can do that for like chord slides. Like if it's you're holding like a chord and then you slide down to another chord on the fretboard, you don't want to just like add a slide down to some random fret down there and like actually have it hold that. You can do the unpitched slide of the chord, and it'll just show the slides in game like just going out into like nothing, and that's a good indicator of like, okay, we just need to slide down onto something to make some noise. And then I'll put some examples on screen, and that's basically unpitched slides. And you can just you'll get used to them after a while once you hear them in songs. So another thing we're going to talk about are bends. So here's an example of a song I did where just there's a bend that goes like up and down pretty quick. Um, as you can see, it's just one solid note. I don't mark it as a bend, but if you put tech notes on it, it marks it as a bend anyway in game. But I've recently been setting these to ignore because they just don't even register half the time anyway. So this is up to you if you want to, be strict about your charts. But I recently just started setting bends to ignore because I watch people play them and they just never detect. So, but if you want to manipulate the bend like this one, for example, so we can listen to it real quick. So he does like a little quick up and down right there, and then to do that, you would basically do this. Also, you press F4 to get into the tech note view. It'll say up here across the top, and this will allow you to see, your bends here. So this follows like the same logic as the slides. Pretty much is like hold until this point, and then do your little bend. You want to kind of think of it like the slides basically. Like you hold until this point and then come down, but you don't want to like do this because it'll have like a little slow downward bend here versus right here. If I kept this, it'll be an instant bend, which also I'll show a picture in game of what that looks like. And then but this is how you would pull this bend off here, and we'll find some more examples, and I'll post some pictures of what they look like in game. Basically, if you wanted a bend that slowly rises, you would do this. So as the logic says, hold or like slowly go from this note to this note. But if you wanted to do a quick like bend at the end, you would put a 0 here, and you press Control B and set your bend. It'll be in half steps or quarter steps. I just keep it at half steps, but sometimes some tabs will have them in quarter steps, so make sure to check your tab for all this. So now here with this, basically it's like hold the note until right here and then bend up. And so it basically follows the same logic as everything else. So if you want to do like a bend right here and then hold it for a second and then bend up another half step, then this is what it would look like here. So in the game, this would just hold until this point and go straight up, and then you can make it go down right here. So this is how you can manipulate your bends. And yeah, you just right click like you would a note, and then just press Control B. And there's all kinds of stuff you can do with tech notes. I really only use them for bends. I don't think I've used them for a whole lot of other stuff, but there are some other stuff you can use them for. You can check the Customs Forge DLC thing, and you can do text slides and stuff too, so you can make like a chord slide over just one note of it. So there's all kinds of crazy stuff you can do with tech notes, but this is just bends for right now. So you want to get in the habit of not making these actual bends, like the Control B bends. I'd recommend just never using Control B because it just creates like a generic bend on it. You want to actually just always use tech notes, and just because this makes the bend in game. So you want to make it as accurate as possible. So just make sure it's got this little star with the parentheses. That means it's tech note bent. Because if you do Control B, it'll show a little 1 there. And it just creates like a generic bend. So you don't want that. You always want to have the tech notes here. So just get in the habit of disabling the Control B part when you get to these, and then just make sure it's got the tech notes set up right. The way you set them. Here's an example of a chord with one note bent. This is one of those chords where you like bend, it starts dissonant, and then you bend up until they reach the same note. So we'll go ahead and listen. This is my Breaking Benjamin chart. So you can see it just starts, goes up. It could probably honestly be faster, and then it just goes until here, and then slowly lets down. So I'll show an example of what this looks like in game as well, but this is how you do that. You just mark this string as 0, don't add any bends to it. Make sure it's not marked as bend down here because it'll show this string bent too. But if you don't mark the entire note as bend, like outside of tech notes, it'll have this one sustained 0 the whole time. And then you can bend this string here. You can like manipulate it around and do whatever. So if you want to do a pre-bent note, so the note is already bent, then you strum it and then come down. This song doesn't have one in it, but I just made this for the video. So you would actually mark your first part as a bend, and then you would add a 0 afterwards. So this is, you would mark this as a 2 if it's a full step pre-bend, and then come down. So you can do all kinds of stuff with these tech notes, but I'm just kind of trying to show as many bends as I can. And then the final one is usually the one that's most common, is they strum it and then immediately bend, which you could do something like this, or you can kind of listen for where it hits its peak. You just slow down the song and kind of go from there. And then once you see this little parentheses here, that means there's a tech note with a bend in it. So you can see once you enter tech note, you can see this here. So this is probably the most common one you'll do, where you do a quick bend up. So definitely mark these if you want your chart to be accurate. Alright, so here's the most dreaded part of charts, in my opinion, is the fret hand positions. And this is basically just where your index finger is. So here's a tapping pattern in this periphery song I did. And you can see it's kind of assuming your index finger goes to 15 and then back to 6 and then to 10. So this is all kinds of messed up. I'll show an example of what it looks like in game here. And it basically just is going all over the place, the little blue part under the highway. So you can manually edit these. I would recommend it. And you can press shift, hold shift, and then you page up and page down, and they'll let you go to individual notes. So you can press shift F to generate the hand position, so we can act like one didn't exist here, and you can set this to 6. So you want to assume that the next finger is on the lowest point of this pattern. So on this one it's 6 here because you're hitting 6 with your index, and then 10 probably with your pinky, and then on this pattern here below it you go to 7 and 8. So it's possible you could keep it at 6 here. It's up to you what you want to do. It may actually just be 6 through all of this part here. I don't really know how they tap this. This is like a weird pattern. But the way I did it was I just went to, let's see, we'll go ahead and fix it here. Shift page down, and we'll just delete this one and then go to this one. An easy way to just start deleting them is you can do Control Shift F, and this will show all of the fret hand positions here. And then you can just start going down and deleting them. You gotta spam delete here, and then delete to where you think is fine. So you can do your shift page down, and then on this here, our pattern starts at 7. We'll assume they put their index there, and then move their index back to 6 here, which they probably don't, but just for the video, you would probably want to know how they actually tap this pattern to do this. But you basically just go and find where the index finger gets lower. So far it's still on 7, but right here they go to 14, so you would set that to 14. That's the lowest point in all these notes here until you get to this next 13. So you would go here in 13, and you can also set it on the note itself. This just gives it a little bit of leeway to show before, like where your index is going. And then let's see. So you still hold 13. You could go to 14 here, and then go to 13 again. And so basically you just kind of do that and repeat until you get to the part where you're finished. And then I'll show what they look like in game, that way you kind of get a good idea. But this one had like a ton of stuff, but I'll show a few of them that I did and show you how the fret hand positions helped a little bit. And also I'll show like one that's really screwed up that I've fixed, and show you how to fix some issues with them. I'm just going to show, this is a quick easy one that I did. So if you notice this one here, it never goes below 5. So this one's extremely easy. You can basically just set this entire thing to 5 here. So what we can do is do Control Shift F, and then it looks like our last note is at 29 seconds. So we can just go here and then Control Shift F to get the ones before it. So let's see, we got the 5, and we just go down to 29 seconds basically. So we start deleting down to 29. And then so now we can literally just set this to 5, and this is it, because the lowest point, they use their index for 5 on all of this. So this in game is just straight up 5. This is a really easy one, and that's as simple as it can be. Although you want to look at the index, where your index finger would be. So 5, they'll be tapping 5/8 with their pinky and index finger, and then tapping on 13. So they'll always stay in the 5 area. So this is how you would pull this one off. It's a really easy one. And usually tapping sections are where I would highly recommend doing it on the most. And some other patterns, maybe like if they're doing like a couple on the E string here and then go up to the B string, you can, if they stay on the same fret, like 15, and then they play like 15, 17, 19 or something, and they just keep going up and down. You can just set it to 15, and it'll keep the hand position in game to that, and that's how you would pull that off as well. So another thing you want to do if you don't want to be a massive shitter is to actually make sure you mark your hammer-ons and pull-offs and tapping sections, and just in general too. But a lot of times if you import a guitar profile, sometimes the hammer-ons, pull-offs, and taps don't register right. So you can see like this one here is like a hammer-on tap, and then some of these just aren't marked, so it'll just make it look awful in game. And sometimes you can't even tell what's actually supposed to be tapped. So this is just an example. This is one of the Protest the Hero songs I did. I just re-imported the tab to show like how messed up some of this is. It sucks, but you got to go through here and actually fix stuff like this. So I'll just do a little example. So I don't leave the hammer-on tap. Just make sure to change it to a regular tap. It's a Control-T on the keyboard. And then according to their tab, these notes right here, they're not actually picked. So they're like the hammer-on. Like it shows in Guitar Pro with a little like hammer tap. I forgot what it's called. Let me figure out what it's called. Yeah, left hand tapping is what it's called. So you just like hammer on it without strumming it. So you just go through here, add your little tails on these here, and then 12 you pull off to 9, and then pull off to 6, and then you left hand tap, and then change this to regular tap. And you just kind of go through and fix this up. So let's see, pull off to 6, change this to tap, left hand tap, do your little slide there, and then pull off to 9, pull off to 6, hammer on, and you basically just go through and repeat. You want to actually make sure your chart's accurate. So I would recommend knowing about guitar, like how the hammer-ons and pull-offs work, and then you just fix this section up. Unfortunately, you got to do it to not make your chart look like dog shit, because there are a lot of tapping sections I see where people just leave it like this, and like it just has random strum notes in the middle of it, or sometimes the taps aren't even marked, so people just won't know to tap it. And this section's obviously tapped. We can listen to it just because I like this part of the song. Also, the yellow boxes, fix these. Remember, this is supposed to be a 6, this is supposed to be a 4. They lie. So yeah, go through here, fix all this up. Very important, make sure mark your hammer-ons and pull-offs correctly. Don't be a scrub. Alright, so this is going to be like a little voiceover section. Shout out to Dell for doing these clips for me so I don't have to record them myself because I'm lazy. So you can actually use fret hand positions and hand shapes to make chord boxes resized. I'll show some examples. I'll show the videos too, but you can see like if you just leave the default hand position, it'll make the chord boxes really long, like you see in the video. You can actually hand shape to contain them in a box, and then set the fret hand position for each one of those boxes, and it'll resize it to the size you want it to be. So I'll put the EOF picture and the video on screen. So I would do this when you play through your chart and you notice one of them is like longer than usual. You can go back in EOF and section it off with the hand shape, and then set the fingering for it, and that'll compress it down. That way it's not a big long chord. And I'll show an example coming up of one of my charts that's really screwed up like that. Alright, so here's one of the first charts I uploaded. I commissioned this one from somebody, and then they let me upload it under my Customs Forge account, but it has some wacky fret hand positions, and we'll just take a look at the first couple. But you can see how bad in those images that it was. Like all the chords are stretched and all kinds of wacky stuff. So I'm not gonna lie, I already recorded this part once, and I tried to like redo what I had, but I forgot. So it was something like this. So we'll go through and act like this is my first time doing it again. But it was pretty similar to this. So here, you would put it at 1. Remember it's your index through pinky, so it pretty much wants you to do 4 fingers, so 4 frets worth of span. So that's when it starts getting wacky, is when it's like outside the 4 frets. So here we would do 12 because it slides down to 12. So we go here, and then you can put this back up at 1. That way the open note appears back at the next to the 1 and 4. You could technically put it down at 12. It may be easier to see, but I would just put it back up at 1. And then same thing here, you just change this to 12, and then let that go back. And then this right here was one that was like super screwed up in those pictures. So it has like 3 down here, but it's stuck at 1. So it's like stretching the entire like 1 through 8. So you would go here and set this to 6. And then this here, I would get rid of this and move the 3 down to this here. Because 6 is the lowest in this little pattern here. And we kind of just go back through and 12. And this little pattern here, there's 2 is the lowest. We could technically just get away with leaving it as 1, but I don't even, this riff probably isn't even played like this, but you would definitely move your middle finger to 3 and then play 2 behind it. So you would put this, or yeah, you'd use your index for 2 on this little pattern here. And then this part here, you can just move it down to 1 probably. Let's see. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but yeah, here's like a good example. So like this was at 7, and then it just like kind of had some wacky stuff going on. So we go through here and set this to 12, and then just in case we'll set this to 1, and then we'll set this back to 1, and then set this to 6. So we'll just do those as an example, and then later on it gets crazy. I gotta go through and find it here. So yeah, this is a crazy one. I don't know how this one got generated, but this one, like the notes span like the entire fretboard. So this is one of the ones you would definitely want to go through, and I'll put a picture of what it used to look like. Oh yeah, this is 12. So some of these you could like make the choice to keep the zeros down towards 5, and that way it kind of stays in the same area. I like to try and move them all back up to the well, you could probably try and keep this one down. I like to try and make it consistent, so right here it stays at around there. Let's see, yeah, because it eventually goes back to the 1/4 almost, so we'll just put it back at 1, and then we'll do we could set the 4 here, delete this, and then yeah, this one's right. So it sees this coming up and it like stretches the entire fretboard, I'm pretty sure. So this is where you would manually set all this. And now we go back to 1. Yeah, so this is one of those really wacky ones. So we'll set this here, and it will tell you that this fret hand position's wrong, which is kind of funny because it sure as hell won't fix them, but it'll tell you there's something wrong. I don't know if, yeah, this one will tell you. So it's like, hey, this is lower than the highlighted range of the fretboard, so it knows that this needs to be 13, and then the 0 is down at 7, or I think it's on the 1 right now. So it's like, hey, we're stretching from 1 to 7 here. Do you want to fix this? So we're just gonna ignore this for the rest of the video. We'll just show that one part that I fixed there, and then we'll check it out in game and see what it looks like. So this is that chart we just went through and did a couple fixes on, and we'll take a look and see if it's still screwed up based on those pictures we had earlier. So I didn't fix this part. I went a little bit further and fixed. So I don't know if I went like later and fixed it, or. 'Cause, It may have been earlier. Let's see. Yeah, so there's the part we fixed. So here's where it starts to get wacky again. But I fixed that one part, and then you can see afterwards. This is what it looks like. So yeah, it's this is definitely something you need to make sure you boot up your chart, take a look at it. I mean, you don't even have to be able to play this to see that this is messed up. So this is where you just at least boot it up in Rocksmith and look at it, or have somebody play test it. Maybe have a streamer like Will Fox. Shout out Will Fox. Go follow him on Twitch. He'll play it for you as long as it's not a black metal song or something. But you always have somebody test it out. It doesn't hurt before you upload it and have a ton of people download it and then they all hate it. So definitely you just boot it up and take a look at it. It's all you got to do. All right, so I should probably go over some things you should set to ignore. Pretty much at this point with bends, I'm done with them. I'm just setting all my bends to ignore from now on. But pretty much you want to always set harmonics, pinch and natural harmonics to ignore. They like never register in game. They can register every once in a while, but it's not even worth it. I always just set these to ignore. So you can set notes to ignore with Control Shift I, and you can see there it's putting a little I on it. And then the hotkey for natural harmonic is Control H, and it puts a little like diamond there. And then Shift H is pinch harmonic, so it puts a little triangle. So that's how you tell the difference. So we can listen. This is one of my necrophagus charts, which has a lot of those in it. So. So, as you can see, there's a lot of pinch harmonics and natural harmonics on this path, and I made a hand shape for them, so that's basically like the arpeggio box. So let these ring out is what I'm trying to say, although a lot of people may not see it that way if you don't use the arpeggio notation, but even Ubisoft doesn't use that anymore, so I always use Handshape for like arpeggio type stuff. But yeah, this is just an example of one that I set all of the pinch harmonics to ignore. So another little ignore thing that people don't know about are trills, which if you don't know what trills are, it's just you sit there and you anchor one note and then you just like hammer on and pull off the other note basically, and then after a while though they stop detecting in game after like a few of them. Like I'd say probably once it got to like mid this bar here, it probably just stopped detecting the notes. So you want to mark large sets of trills as ignore. You know, maybe if it's just a few of them, it's probably fine. But if it's like a really long section of them, I would definitely recommend marking a lot of them as ignore because they just won't detect. I think if you just restrum and but it's if it's a section where the person isn't actually supposed to strum and you want it to be accurate, I would recommend setting it to ignore. But you can also just maybe add like a little random strum note too, and then force people to restrum to keep the trill going. And here's an example of one that would just stop detecting. So we'll listen. So this one just goes on for a while, and it would probably stop detecting like after a little bit. So it's just one of those things I would recommend doing for large sets of trills, and I've had to do it on quite a few of my charts because I've watched people play them and they just start missing notes for no reason, even though they're hitting it right. It's just how the game works. So another set of things you need to know for ignore notes is a lot of dissonant chords. The problem is a lot of these you won't really know unless you play Rocksmith a lot. So these are kind of rough to figure out. But if you're able to play some of these, you can obviously tell. But like this, for example, this chord here, there's so many notes that are within like a range of each other that the game just can't detect it. Like these just won't pick up, which I learned that by having somebody play test, and they were never able to get these notes to pick up. So generally, if it's like on the lower strings and it's like really dissonant, it probably won't pick it up. So you can kind of go based off that, but like all of these, I just said to ignore. Like even these here, where there's even more dissonance on top of these. There was like a 2-6 earlier. Yeah, like this doesn't register. I know that for sure. So if they're like within a couple notes of each other, like I don't think it has trouble with tritones, but it sometimes does if it's on like a really low string, or if it's on like a higher string. But I know like some panic chords don't pick up because they're within like a few notes of each other. So this is another thing you want to look out for. Is some of these will just like never register. Like this one may not even register. I don't remember if this one registered or not. So you kind of just got to go through and listen to some of the chords and be able to play them. And if they're like extremely dissonant, probably set them to ignore. The game may not like them, but if you're able to play it, obviously, then you can do that. But you can listen to these. So you can tell these are like extremely dissonant, and the game is just like, what even is this? So yeah, as an example of some chords you may need to take a look at and set them to ignore. Speaking of harmonics, the harmonic scrapes, I figured I'd do a little tutorial on that too. So this, I already did this on this chart, but I kind of reverted these to show. So if you import a tab, they most likely didn't have it like this here. So this is like the Gojira type thing, or if you listen to Within the Ruins, this is Absolute Hell by Within the Ruins, but this part is dirt nasty. We can take a listen here. Oh yeah, it's like good stuff. But in the tab here, we got this. And in game, this is just one big harmonic. We don't want that. We want this here. So what I do is I just go through here and delete all these and kind of assume it goes down to the, the A string or something. So make sure your grid snap, you should have done this way earlier, but set this kind of high and then get as close as you can and just start making, the scrape pattern here. So this is going up, so you'd start at the high string and go up here, and then you can mass select them with the shift key, so we can control 3, change them to 3, and I believe control H is natural harmonic. So then you can highlight all of them and then control shift I to set them ignore so they don't count in game, and then at this point you just copy and paste them. So I can go to this next one here and just copy and paste, and then we got our dirt nasty harmonic scrapes. So I've also seen people do where instead of, if you can't figure out what fret it's on, you can like mute the whole string. So you could do like 0 and then just, you can change these to 0 and then do the same thing, and it'll just show like a string harmonic muted at like this area. So it'll be like between 3 and 4. It'll probably be on like the first, I think since the lowest part is probably 2 here, so it'll probably be on the 2nd fret. But you can also do that as well. But since I know this is like on the 3rd, it's like the edge of the 3rd fret, and I already know where this is at. But definitely make sure your harmonics are set to ignore as well. This is just like a quick little tip for that. Alright, so we'll go over pick scrapes. These are pretty quick. Basically, I've seen these notated a bunch of different ways, but this is just how I do them. I think Ubisoft has done it like this in the past as well, so this may be the right way to do it. So, here's what one sounds like if you don't know what pick scrape is. So this is where you get your pick and slide on the strings with it. This is a chart I did a while ago, so it actually isn't properly done, but I like to mark it around 12 because I don't want the whole camera to zoom out to like 24, but technically you're supposed to put it at like 24 because you're down towards that end of the guitar, but I just do 12, and then you want to set it as, here, we'll just remove all this stuff, so we'll just delete this. So we'll set it as 12 here, and then you want to mark it as a tap and then ignore as well. The unpitched slide probably makes it ignored anyway, but then you just extend it and you make it an unpitched slide with control U and then slide down to wherever, and then you want to mark it as a tremolo note. So you'd go up here to note, tremolo, and mark, and now it has all this stuff on it. And then so it'll still have the chord box in game. To delete the chord box, just press N on it and then put a space here on the name, and then that'll get rid of the chord box. It'll ask if you want to change, if there's other chords that exist in this that are the same. It'll ask if you want to remove those too. If you actually care about the chord names, I would click no on that. But there's none of that in this. And the tremolo I think if you make any changes to this note, the tremolo just comes undone for some reason. So make sure it's got the little 3 lines here. So you may have to remark it again. And then you also got to split it too. So add a split, and it'll have this here, and you just do that under note split, and then it'll look like this in game here. So that's a pretty good indicator of what you're supposed to do. Alright, so this is like a major point of contention for a lot of people, is tremolo notes versus just putting the actual notes. So tremolo notes are, the little squiggly lines, and it basically just means strum really fast. The problem is though, is like, say you got a song at like 100 BPM, and then you're strumming like eighth notes or something, like, and you put tremolo for that, like, that's so dumb. I don't know why you would do that, but unless you're lazy. But this type of song, for example, probably wouldn't be a bad idea to put tremolo notes. But I like to show people how fast you got to strum, because if this swaps from like 16th notes or whatever down to like quarter notes, and you put tremolo for all of it, then like, nope, you're not gonna know. So I always like to actually show how fast you're strumming. So this type of song, you are 100% strumming as fast as possible. It's MVP by Despised Icon. So yeah, this is a classic, but as you can see, you're strumming very fast. So tremolo notes would not be bad here. Oh yeah, we'll act like I didn't already do an example here, but so I like to personally just convert to the regular notes. There is some detection issues sometimes though, like with a lot of these strum notes, so that could be an issue. Is if you strum heavily on a note, it may not recognize all the time, especially on like the higher strings. I feel like sometimes they have little issues, especially if your guitar is not intonated. But so if you want to create a tremolo, what you would do is you just basically find where, so they kind of end on this bar here, so you would just take this note and then go to note tremolo mark, and then it just creates a little 3 lines here. This means it will show up as like a squiggly strum bar in game, and it's just personal preference really, but I like to always convert tremolo sections into the how fast you're actually strumming, because it gives you like a clear picture of how fast you're supposed to strum. So this is just one of those things that, if you want to be nice to people, you can give them the tremolo notes, or if you want to actually show how fast you're supposed to strum, then use regular notes. So this should be a little quick segment. This is mainly preference of forced sustains. So you can force chords and palm mutes to sustain. Normally palm mutes won't sustain. Like if you have like an open string palm mute and you extend the note, it just won't even register in game unless you go to force sustain. So I'll put some pictures of what they look like. You kind of got to use these a little wisely, because it's easy to make your chart look really tacky. Here's like an example. So like this chord right here, I didn't force sustain it because this 2 comes up, and if it was sustained, you could probably not see this 2 coming. So you kind of gotta, weigh your options, and just also test your chart and make sure it's good. And if it looks a little funky, you can just not sustain it. But to force a chord sustain, you just go to note, Rocksmith, menus, thanks, and then toggle force sustain. There's no hotkey for this, of course, so it's best to just like mass select. So like say I wanted to sustain all these, even though they're already sustained, you can just control click and then note Rocksmith toggle force sustain, and it'll turn them on. It turned them off right there, and then that's an easy way. But you can get them to show up as the whole chord in game. But I'll put an example of maybe one that's hard to see. That way you kind of got an idea of, maybe you don't want to do all of them like that, but you can selectively do them and make your chart look a little cleaner that way. If it's just one chord being held for a really long time, like this one here, this one's held for quite a while, and then so you can kind of go off that. So this is a very important part, and it is handshapes / arpeggios. So you can use handshapes for a ton of stuff. It's mainly just to specify the fingering of like chords and stuff like that. But you can also use them like earlier, you can use it to separate some chords. So like here, I used it for staccato basically. I forced all of these into a box with a hand shape, and then it basically it assumes everything in that box afterwards is something different. So you can use that to your advantage to, assume like these chords are different. Because like this here, even though I didn't hand shape these, it just assumes this is one hand shape, and it'll start again over here. So this would be like, it'll show this chord again with like the little follow-up boxes. So you can use that to your advantage for those types of things. However, for like arpeggiated type stuff, so we can listen to this real quick, and you can tell obviously that it's arpeggiated. So those are obviously arpeggios. So the Ubisoft doesn't do the arpeggio notation anymore, which a lot of people don't either, because it's like a weird purple color and it's really annoying to look at, and it's also really hard to see like the notes too. I'm also colorblind, so it makes it even worse for me. But I think even Ubisoft realized how bad it was, and some of their later ODLCs, they just don't even use the arpeggio notation anymore. They just use hand shapes. So I can show you how to do both. So always first, find your, you'll know if you play guitar, you'll know that the root note changes means the chord most likely changes. So you can kind of tell, like this is a different chord than this one here, obviously. So you want to make sure you have some room for the box to like kind of have a little fade out. So you're gonna always kind of extend the last note of the chord to, don't get right up on the note, but maybe go like a little bit behind it, and then you highlight all of it, and then kind of you can like put your finger in the chord and kind of make sure it's actually a real chord and stuff like that, or it all fits. And then you can just press Control Shift H on the keyboard, then you'll get this little purple box here, and then you take your last note and you pull it back here. So this will give you like a little extra leeway for the box to kind of like fade out. It doesn't like actually abruptly end on this 9 here. And then you just do the same thing. Oh, this one's held for a minute, so we can listen to this one here. So it kind of goes. So it kind of ends right there. So you can leave some of these extended. Like this one, I probably actually would leave extended to like here or something. Just to give it a little bit of room. I mean, even on some, some guys do them so fast that you can't have enough room to even add that little extra there. So even just adding like a little bit like this is good enough. Just to give it a little bit extra room. That way it doesn't end like exactly on this note here. So let's see. Yeah, so this one technically changes. They move their hand down. So really anytime the fingering changes, you want to make a new hand shape if you can. So right here, most of the notes are the same, but they get on to 8 here. So technically this is another hand shape. But you can also use like ghost notes to move the fingers around too. We can maybe take a look at some examples of that. But for this example here, we'll just create 2 hand shapes. And then, remember, just give it a little bit of leeway at the end there and pull them all back. And then I don't usually like add sustains to these unless it's a really long held note. So like even like these right here, this 7, I don't know if it'd be worth adding like this to it or not, because it may look a little weird in game. It may just be better to leave them all like unsustained. Majority of people know that if they see this little white box in game, that it's an arpeggio at this point. But if you want to use the arpeggio notation, you can. So we can kind of go back and act like we're doing arpeggios this time. So for arpeggio, it's just Control Shift G, and it'll create this green box here. And the only good thing about the arpeggio notation is it actually shows like the chord coming up, which is really nice because it will have like a little box that shows what's coming up. But the problem is it's that ugly purple color, and like you can't even I'm colorblind, I can't even see the notes on the high E string because it's like the same color. So if there's like an open high E string note, I can't even see it. And it also like highlights the color of the note underneath the purple. I'll put a picture of it obviously, and you can look at it, and it's pretty awful to look at. So hand shapes are definitely the way to go for me. But it's just personal preference. You could technically just do arpeggios if you want, but even like Ubisoft themselves don't even use that anymore, so it's kind of like an outdated thing. But it is kind of nice to show the chord that's coming up. And that's the only reason I like the arpeggio notation, but I don't use it. So the only time I will use the arpeggio notation is for like those really slow arpeggiated, like, I mean it's a chord, but they like slow downstroke it. That's the only time I use the arpeggio notation, mainly because if you do that on a hand shape, sometimes it's really hard to see like what the chord actually is. Whereas the arpeggio notation will show what the chord is at least, so you have a shot of like figuring out what it is. But here's an example of what those sound like. So the last one, I mean, they're really close on this one, but you can space them out a little bit. I kind of try to put them close because you can kind of see it coming at you. Because if you space them out, it's kind of hard to see some. If you are going like with a downstroke, if you go with an upstroke, it'd be easy to see them. But where you're going down, some of the notes hide each other sometimes. But this is like the only time I use the arpeggio notation is for like these slow downstrokes, which honestly I don't even like. People, you could just do it as a regular note too. People could just use their ears and figure it out, but it's personal preference for me. Okay, so here's our hand shape we did in Editor on Fire, and this is a hand shape, not an arpeggio, but it's an arpeggiated chord. This is how you're technically supposed to do it. So I would always recommend using a hand shape over an arpeggio, but I'll show you both, and you can just make up your mind on which one you like better. This one doesn't show the hand shape until the chord starts, which the arpeggio will actually show the hand shape, which is kind of nice. So you can see what chord's coming up, but we'll take a look at this here. So you can ignore my goofy fingering on that because I think that's a thumb chord, but these dudes have like some crazy chords I've never even like seen before, so I just had to take a guess at them. So we'll check the arpeggio one now. So this is the arpeggio notation. So this was the green one we did. As you can see, it actually like displays the chord coming up here, which is actually really nice. That's a good thing. But when you see when the notes start flying, it looks a little weird because it starts to highlight the bottom of the little purple box here, and it just looks weird to me. So we'll check it out. So you can see, like, I personally think it looks weird. Like, it's maybe just where I'm colorblind, but like, let's see. This one's not too bad. But like this one here, it changes the lines to like match the colors below it, and it kind of looks like random open strings or something. That's just me though, but even Ubisoft stopped using this, so obviously there's a reason. So it's up to you if you want to actually use this or not. But I actually do like how it shows the chord shape before it actually shows up, or before you actually have to play it, which is nice. You can go ahead and get your hand in that position, but it's just hard to see personally. Man, we're getting to the end. It's been fun chilling with you guys. So pretty much the last thing, you can do this also while you're just going through your chart and doing your polishing, but you want to add sections if you can, for for really hard parts especially. The DLC builder does auto generate them, but there is an issue. So if you remember when we first imported our tab, and if you accidentally selected the thing where it is like you want to import all sections, well, if the tab has like weird sections, it could actually create like a phrase back here. So you'll have like a little yellow line across here, and then there will be no other yellow lines. But the DLC builder will see this yellow line here and be like, okay, this is our section, and then the camera won't move in game. So that's, if you see one with like a broken camera, it probably just has one section. So you could actually you could fix it by opening it in EOF and go to Beat, Events, All Events, and then just delete it. And then you can resave it and let the DLC builder rebuild the sections automatically. But usually want to manually add these, and then you can just do that by pressing Shift S, and then you can pick, your verse. You can actually do it per verse, or you can do it per like section you think is difficult. So this is a Necrophages song. I did have sections for this one, but I just deleted them for the video. So you kind of go through here, and you could make a like every 30 seconds or something, just kind of up to you. Or you can actually, like, when they go to a chorus, So I pretty much just go through and add like per section, like right here. I would basically just look at what would be something somebody would want to practice, basically. So I kind of just go based off that. So this is kind of like the same section here. So sometimes I'll give somebody like this here. I'll give them one of these, and then I'll just like extend the next one if it's not. So I didn't really need to add that one, but I'll get rid of it and then come back here. And this looks like a riff that somebody would want to practice, and it's like a start of a new section. So yeah, it is a stupid hard. So you can do it per arrangement. So you can do this specific to part real guitar, and also make sure you click add a Rocksmith phrase here. Honestly, I'm not like too versed in this because I just recently started doing it. But this pretty much has to be checked for it to like actually add like a little purple bar in game, at least for what I've noticed anyway. But you could do a section per arrangement. So I honestly, I don't even care about bass half the time. I ain't gonna lie. So if I find a really hard part on bass, I'll make a section for it. But a lot of times with sections, you got to be careful where you place them too, because if you place them in like the middle of a handshape here, it'll break it. So you kind of got to like, I think all you have to do is like put the ghost notes here, and then it'll actually like keep the handshape in check. But especially slides, if you like put it on top of a slide, it'll break the slide in half. So you kind of got to like be careful where you place them at too. So if you got a big section like this where it's like a big arpeggio, you want to try and like do it before or after that. So if I ran into this here and I wanted somebody to practice this note, I would put a section behind it. That way it doesn't break this hand shape or a slide or something. So you basically just kind of go through and find parts that you would think people find difficult and would want to practice. I don't remember. Yeah, so this is leads. There's probably like a solo I missed. Yeah. So basically I would go here and then you can section off the solo how you see fit. So this first sweep you can, and you can continue on for this little run here. And you can start the other sweep. And so you can kind of section it off how you see fit, really. It may mess with bends too. I try not to put it on bend notes either. I try to do it before or after, so. Actually, we'll delete that old one and do this one here. Yeah, so you get the idea. Just section off parts you think are very difficult and you would want people to be able to have practice for, and then you can do it per arrangement. So if you find like a part on bass that doesn't really overlap with the other sections, you can just do it per arrangement. So definitely do this as like one of the last things, or you can also just do it while you're running through and doing your polishing too. I like to do that. I'll just throw some sections in and mark like difficult spots. So probably one of the more confusing parts of this video is bass. So I'm going to start out with just 4-string that basically the game only recognizes E standard to C standard, and then below that you got to apply the low tuning fix, which I'll show in this at the end of this section here. But as long as it's within E standard to C standard, just make sure you go up here to track and you're on real bass, and then make sure your arrangement is set to bass here, and this will make it the 4-string arrangement in game. So just make sure your tuning set right. Just go up here, set tuning. This would just be dropping it from standard on bass. So this is in drop D flat, and this is within the range of what it recognizes. So this one's really easy. You just dump this one into the DLC builder and go. But you basically just do your chart, like nothing super special here. Just chart it on 4-string, and then if it is preferred by the bassist to have everything on the bass arrangement. So if you get like a 5-string tab, but they don't use the higher string on it, but it's all on the lower four strings. Then you want to actually put it on the bass arrangement here. It's preferred by the bassist because if you use the guitar arrangement, it adds like more strings and just more to look at. But if it's four string capable, definitely put it on the bass arrangement. If it's actually a 5 or 6 string path, you got to use bonus rhythm, which is the next section of this here. So don't put 5 or 6 string tabs that actually use the higher strings on the 4 string arrangement, because it'll cause laser notes, which I'll put a picture of right here. And this is what happens when you go above the 4 string, because the game only sees 4 strings if you're using this arrangement here. So definitely don't do that. Make sure you actually set it to 4 strings. If it happens to add a 5th string and it's not used, you can go up here to Pro Guitar and set number of strings and change it to 4. Make sure this is always 4 on the bass arrangement. And then I'll go ahead and show you in the DLC builder how easy it is to deal with these higher tunings here. So with the 4 string arrangement, as long as it's E standard to C standard, it's super straightforward. You just make sure you got your arrangement in here. Make sure it's this blue one here. That's how you know it's set in EOF as bass. But basically, you would just go here, grab your bass arrangement, and you're just done. Basically, the max you got to do is set it to picked if it's from E standard to C standard. Below C standard, though, you got to do the low tuning fix, so I'll show you that after this. I don't think I've had this happen recently, but sometimes sometimes it can import like this, where it won't fill out these last 2 strings. You want to make sure you fill these in if it does, because it'll show up as custom tuning in game, and even though this was in drop D flat. I haven't had that happen, though, on the bass arrangement. It does do it on the guitar one, though, so I'll show you that here in a second. But if it's the bass arrangement, just make sure all these numbers are filled out, and it actually shows a tuning here if it's within the range. Right, so here's the one I did in drop B flat, but this goes below a C, so we would need to apply the low tuning fix here for it to actually work in game. So if it's the bass arrangement, this blue one here, it's super simple. You can just right click and apply low tuning fix, and you see here it changed our values. And so what it did was it dropped the bass an octave, and then it tunes up from the octave back to B flat. So this just tricks the game into basically recognizing lower notes than it usually does. So yeah, just make sure these numbers are positive here, and then you got your 220 tuning pitch. It'll say here as well, but don't set these as negatives, because it'll make the game think it's even lower than an octave down. So it would make you use emulated bass to tune, which is not preferred. So just make sure these numbers are positive here, not negative, if you're using the bass arrangement here, and then you'll notice that one because of the little blue part. Alright, so 5 and 6 string bass is where it starts to get a little tricky. So what you want to do is you want to make sure your track, or your arrangement is set to bonus rhythm. This is like the universal thing that it's got a 5 or 6 string bass chart normally. So bonus rhythm is what you're supposed to use for this, and then basically what we're doing here is we're just tricking the game into seeing a guitar, and then we're making it think it's an octave lower than it is. So that's the point of this whole thing, is to you trick the game into recognizing tuning below what it normally does. So that's the whole point why you're using bonus rhythm, is it's on a guitar path, and then we'll apply some fixes to trick it into making it recognize the lower notes. You always want to make sure 100% that your EOF tuning is set right, because this will make it way easier in the DLC builder to get it fixed. So you got a track, Pro Guitar, set tuning here, and then so technically where you're on a guitar path, it will act like a guitar tuning. So you want to drop all these by like a fourth to equal out to the the 5 string bass tuning or 6 string bass tuning. So make sure you fill all these out properly. This is 5 string standard bass. So just look at your letter here, make sure it's right, tuned down from standard basically. So this chart here is just, I picked one in standard, and then you can also go up here, and if you want to make it out easier on yourself, you can set the number of strings from 6 to 5. It'll display as 6 regardless in game, but while you're charting it, if you want to make it less confusing for yourself and not have an extra string there, you can do that as well. But really, you just chart everything on it like you would on the other paths. Nothing too crazy. It's just make sure the tuning is right here, and then I'll show you how to do the DLC builder part. So we'll go ahead and go over bonus rhythm in the DLC builder. So Pretty much always check this part here, make sure the tuning's right, and then here was your tuning you set in EOF. You do have to set this last string here, which on bass is just the same as the one before it. It's not the same as guitar, but yeah, you would just fill this out because it'll show up as custom tuning in game otherwise. But now if you put it in game, it'll actually show up with B standard. So make sure you always fill out the sixth string here. And then since basically we're tricking the game into thinking it's a guitar an octave down, and you're also tuning down from that octave, you would go here to this tuning pitch and just change this to 220. So it's an octave below 440. So now we got B standard and A220, and then it drops it -5 from there. So it's tricking the game basically into thinking it's a guitar an octave lower, and then you're going down from that octave. So this is how you're supposed to fill it out. Make sure these values are negative on the bonus rhythm arrangement. On the bass arrangement they got to be positive, but on this one it's negative, so gets a little confusing. But pretty much always just double check here, and if you ever get confused, just download like an established chart or like Albatross, Ramen, or Dell chart, and just check what they did, because even I still do that to this day if I get a little confused. So it doesn't hurt to check anybody else's chart out to make sure you did it right. Hopefully this explained it well enough, but yeah, you want the A220 here, and then make sure your tuning is negative if it's bonus rhythm, and then make sure you fill out your sixth string here, because that's the most important. I'm also going to be putting a link in the description to Dell's written guide on this, and it could explain it a lot better than I did. Shout out to Dell for helping me out with this bass section, helped me make it a little more concise than I was in the first 3 recordings, but definitely check out Dell's written guide. It probably goes a lot more in depth on this and can explain it better than I could. It's just a brief little overview for the video. Guys, we have done it. We have made the best chart of all time. We went through, polished it up, imported our tab, set the BPMs, everything's perfect. Set our staccatos, we set our fret hand positions, we ignored our harmonics, and did all the other polish up, made the bends good, made the slides good. We did everything perfectly. So now what do we do? So now since you've been saving this entire time, it creates an XML file for you, and then this here is what you use to do everything. So we'll go ahead, and when you save, it'll ask if you want to do your chord fingerings, and definitely do these. So fill this out with get your guitar in hand and actually put your fingers in these chords to make sure you get them right. It'll autofill like power chords and stuff, but funky chords like this you gotta actually type in. So we can just act like I did this, and then oh yeah, if you never set a default tone, you can go ahead and set it here, and then you'll have to save again. Of course, you would normally click make sure all that doesn't actually pop up, but for the sake of the video, we have the perfect chart right now, right? Alright, so we go ahead and pull up our DLC builder here. So I'm going to go over a couple things in the DLC builder. You can go up here to File, Config, and then you can set paths here. So you can set your Rocksmith profile. It's in your Steam user data folder. I think these are like the first few paths, and then under remote, there's like a random PRF file or PRF LDB file, and this will be your profile in game, and that will make it to where you can pull your tones if you have them assigned in game. You also set your test builds folder here. You can generate test builds every time you make a change on EOF, and delete and re-add the arrangement in here. And then you can generate like 100 of them if you want, and you don't have to reboot Rocksmith. It generates a new DLC key and chart IDs for everything. So it's really nice if you screwed something up and you just want to check and see if it's fixed real quick. So a really important one that should be checked also is calculate volumes automatically. It should just be checked regardless, so you don't have to worry about it, but just make sure it's on just in case. But this sets it to the industry standard for music streaming, which is -16 LUFS. You can Google that if you want, but it's just like a loudness scale basically, but it's like the standard of what most streaming platforms use. So the goal is to make everybody use this, that way every chart has the same loudness, and it's a decent loudness in game, and it automatically brings every audio file up to it if you leave this on. So this is a really good one to have, and you just basically, once you import your audio, it should auto calculate it for you. But you can always click the three little dots and do calculate automatically, which I'll show you here in a second. But yeah, don't turn that off. Make sure you have, calculate volumes automatically, so it sets it to the industry standard, and you don't have like a super loud or super quiet chart. It's just perfect like all the other ones. You can go to import, and you can make sure this create EOF project is checked if you want, and that'll make it to where if you extract somebody's chart, you can just open the EOF project and edit their chart. It applies a lot of fixes to the chart though, so it makes it kind of annoying to work with if it's already been rendered out. Like the BPMs, it'll have like a pinned BPM like every other beat, because that's just how I guess the builder builds it, or how the game recognizes it. And then you can put your charter name here if you want, and this will make it to where it also it adds your name to the DLC key, and then that way you have a unique key every time, because you want the DLC key to be unique. You don't want to have the same one for every song, or it'll crash the game. So if you ever make any changes to a chart, always change the DLC key and the arrangement IDs. So we'll go ahead and add our arrangement here. So you just get started, click the plus here under arrangement, and then you select your arrangements that you've been doing. And if you notice now, they're all red. That just means the tones aren't assigned to it. So fill all this out, make sure it's filled out. If you got a good audio file, it should have filled it out for you earlier. You can double check this show sort fields here to make sure everything shows up right. And always check your date, because for some reason the date goes off a little bit. And then you find your little album cover, so we'll go ahead and find our cover here. Alright, and then so we'll go ahead and add a tone. So you can just click this plus here, and then you can do import from file. And then you can, if you're like me, you have like a tone folder with like a million tones in it, and then you can just add your tones. I'll just pick random ones. And then you can also go to add from profile, and if you did that little thing earlier I showed you, you can pick from your assigned tones in game. Sometimes it can bug out though, and the description will be like clean or something. You can just change it here. You can also add descriptions to it, so if you want to do like low output distortion, you can click this little plus here and do low output distortion, and then just make sure you select your key here. So this one has low output distortion and lead, so I would just do low out. And then you can also duplicate. So for low output, what I do is I usually just duplicate, and then the low output one I'll just turn it like way down, and then just go assign the one I cloned over. You do want to keep tone volume in mind. I think this one's pretty decently matched. This is just one of those things you gotta mess with until you get it right, but you want to have it matched to the audio, that way your tone's like consistent, not like super loud or anything. So this is one of those things you just gotta get your tone and turn this little volume slider up and down and test it in game. So we'll go ahead and fill these out here until we get them going. Oh, clicked the wrong one. Distortion, lead, oh yeah. Alright, so now they're all white here, which means they're good to go with tones wise. And then you can also set the bass tone key. So this is just, you can just, if you accidentally change the name or something, you can just type it in up here. So if like you get that, for example, that like rhythm underscore bass, if you like don't want to add one like this, you can just change it to distortion. That way you don't have to keep it as rhythm bass. You don't have to clone the tone down here. So we can just get rid of that one. That way I did that. And then you set your bass picked here, and then remember apply your low tuning fix if it goes below C standard. So you just right click, apply low tuning fix if it's the blue bass arrangement. But for the bonus rhythm, you gotta do your you gotta just type your 220 here, and that'll pretty much do it. Just make sure your tuning's right in EOF, and you can always double check here. It'll, even if it's like a weird funky tuning, it'll have this here, so you can actually see what the tuning is. So the big thing is audio. So when you go to select your audio file, you can, let me find our chart here. So the best quality, you want to use this WAV file. However, it can make the chart a little bit bigger. You want to keep it below like 10 megs, I think, somewhere in there. Generally, like the average chart is like 5 to 7 megs or something like that. So you can try it with the WAV file. It can make the DLC a little big though, so if that's the case, you can just do guitar.ogg here. I already tested this one, it was only like a meg bigger, so it's not that big of a deal. So you just pick your WAV file, it also wouldn't hurt to open it in like your audio player and make sure it actually has your leading silence and stuff in it, because I've had that happen before. So just double check. So you select that, and then this auto calculates the volume. This sets the volume to negative 16 dB, I believe, which is like the standard for listening to audio. So you always want to leave this as the default, and then you can also double check here. If you click the three dots and calculate volumes, it'll calculate it for you. So always do this regardless, just in case. But yeah, you want to leave this as like the default, because it takes it to like a standard volume level, and it's eventually, hopefully, they'll have it all where all charts are at one volume level. That way they're not super loud or you can't hear them or anything like that. So always do the calculate volumes here, and then for the preview, you just click create here, and then this is wherever you want it to preview at. I always just pick 30 seconds, because if you're downloading a song, you probably know what you're getting anyway. So, but you can put, if you find a sick part you want to put in there, you can do that. And then at this point, you're pretty much ready to go. So when you go to build, it'll try and validate these arrangements here. I didn't like fully finish this chart, but if you see, if I went to build, it would give me these X's here. You also click this little button up here. So this is really important. You want to go up here and just click issues, and then I don't think the minor issues may stop it, but I think it's these important ones here. So it'll actually tell you, like at this part, 359, your link next is broken, and then phrase breaks a hand shape. So you pretty much have to go fix all these before you can render the chart out. You can just click ignore if you want to, but I would recommend not doing that. As you see now, it makes it green. So I would highly recommend going through and validating the arrangement and make sure you actually fix the issues it tells you to. You just click issues up here, and then go pull up your EOF and find all this stuff, because this will make your chart really nice looking. So this is just like a standard you should hold yourself to. Make sure you can get your arrangements to validate every time without having to go up here and ignore everything. So definitely do that. And then so once you get your little green check marks here, you basically just click build release, and then it'll spawn your folder here whenever it finishes. So here's our folder, and it just generates a PC and a Mac version if you didn't uncheck Mac in the settings earlier. And then at this point, you just drag this into Rocksmith and boot it up, and then for test builds, you can just click build test here, and then you would find your directory, and then here's the one we generated. You have to edit the file in EOF for it to actually generate a V2. So you'd want to go up here and once you make your EOF changes, you delete everything and then re-add everything, and then do the build test again, because it somehow knows, like, it keeps a cache copy too. So if you don't delete and re-add the arrangements, it sometimes keeps a cache copy of it, and it'll be like the same notes you just had, which is, I don't know how it even does that. But just, yeah, you gotta re-add and then do build test here and now, which I didn't change anything, so it's not going to have a V2. But you can see I generated 6 of these up here, and you can just dump these into Rocksmith while it's on, and you don't have to worry about rebooting the game. So that's really nice to have that. Also, a quick little tip with the DLC builder. So you can have the advanced properties on. I think it's in the settings somewhere, but chart IDs and the DLC key determine in game what what it's going to be. So, for example, if you are making, like, you download a chart and it's broken, and then like it doesn't show up in game or something, you can come in here and you can right click on this and generate new IDs for all arrangements, and you see it changes this key here, and then you can also change this to like V1 and then 1.1. You can use this for, like, say you're dumping a chart in, it doesn't show up because you got another one with the same name or something. You can come in here and change all this, and then you can change your name here. You can put like test or something, and then I like to do it on title, sort, and title. I think you have to do it for it to actually show up in game like that. But this, for example, like if I were to render this out, it wouldn't ask me to replace the DLC file or anything. It would just throw it in there, and it should just show up. So keep that in mind. If you got a duplicate chart or something, you can't come in here and change the DLC key and the version, and then that'll generate a new name. So I'll render this out. So you see now we got our test here. So this is just a quick little tip on how to fix some charts, maybe if you have some issues with them not showing up. Also, another little quick thing, I can show you how to dump tones out of this. So you can basically, act like you downloaded a chart. You can also go up to File, Import Piece Art Quick, and this will just pull this up like immediately. You don't have to actually export the entire folder. But you just right-click and then export, and then this will basically just bring up like you got your low output tone here. Like you can just rename it whatever, but don't delete this .tone 2014. You got to keep this part. So you can change this here, the one before it, but you don't delete this .tone.xml because it'll screw the file up. But this is how you export people's tones. If you got a chart that you like, just download the piece arc and import it. And then you also do this import from collection here, and it pops up and asks if you want to download it. But this is every single official DLC from Ubisoft's tone. So if you actually have a good tone, because Ubisoft surprisingly actually makes pretty decent tones for most of their songs. So if you got one that you like, you can get every single one in here, and you can just go up here and search. Like for this one, this AFI chart I used the Miss Murder stuff, and then I just kind of edited it a little bit. This is also a nice little thing that's built into the DLC builder. I haven't used this user thing. I don't know if you can like actually search for a user or something. Yeah, I don't even know how this works, but yeah, this official thing is how you get the official DLC tones if you want those as well. So this is the most important part of all this. Just for the love of Christ, please just boot your chart up in game and look at it. Make sure the tuning's right. Get your guitar, double check, make sure your tuning matches up. Make sure it's good. Definitely also make sure if it's an older song from like the 70s that it's actually an A440. Because there's a lot of those that are not like that, and people will release it as A440 and it's like A427 and it sounds really bad. So check that before you do everything. Come in here, check your bass tuning, make sure it's good. Drop this an octave. Let me turn my thing on here so check your bass tuning. Just get a bass out, at least hit one string so you could drop your guitar string down to C just to make sure, and then go an octave down. Or you can just find the lowest string here, like F, or the highest string, and then try and match it on your guitar, and at least make sure it picks that up, so it's within the range at least. So it's like it's good. And then yeah, just check your tunings. Always check your tunings. And then we'll find one that's a 5-string bass chart that I did. Yeah, so here's you want to double check your 5-string tuning. So make sure you got your A220 here on your guitar path for bonus rhythm. And then let me get my low tune guitar here, and we'll drop this down to B. So this is an octave down B. It's close enough, obviously, so you can see that it's actually like getting to that tuning. When you get this low, though, it kind of has a hard time with it. But now you can see that I'm actually I'm getting the good tuning for it. So this is how you check and make sure the bonus rhythm is right. And then for 6-string bass, this is the tuning. So the string, the last one, is different than guitar. But just make sure at least like the low string matches up, and then you can double check the rest as well. But always check the tunings. Make sure you can actually get a note to go. And really, you just boot up a chart and test. So you just go on it, and then you can play it if you want. I sure as hell ain't gonna play this because I suck at guitar. So I'm just gonna take a look through it basically and make sure it looks good. You got your 8 seconds of leading silence here. It'll start once that little glowy part hits. See, I got my little staccato notes there. Song is stupid difficult. Let's see. We can just skip through here, look for some parts. Find our little tapping part. Yep. Added our fingering here to make this stay at 10. So that's good. Make sure it's in sync, you know, just listen, use your ears. Yep. More tapping that you made sure you did your fingerings for. Got your little tails on the notes here, so they look clean. Okay, you're cooking. This is a clean looking chart right now. So see, this is what you made. This is what we made. Okay, this is the perfect chart. Not really, but it's very good. So, looks good right here. Okay, yep, in sync. Okay. Oh my god, we did it. Best chart ever. Okay. So, test your chart always. Have somebody else play if you're not sure before you upload it for everybody on Customs Forge to play it, because why would you upload a chart that's ass? I don't get why you would want to do that. So, always test your chart. Make sure the camera works. Make sure all of your changes applied. Nothing's super screwed up, like in that clip I showed earlier. Alright, so here's a very blatant example of somebody who 100% did not boot their chart up and listen to it. Let's go ahead and take a listen here. So as you can see, it started immediately. And then, if you don't know, those are supposed to be octave chords, which technically they are octaves of each other, but why would you do it on, like, a 2-string skip? Like, literally nobody does it like that, so that is the biggest troll I've ever seen, probably. That's a pretty good one. Yeah, so, as you can see, there's some parts where there's like not even octave chords, and they put octave chords, and then like, let's see. Yeah, so as you can see, this chart is very rough, and there's no shot this dude actually plays guitar either, because there is no way. They probably just transposed it, and then it like put the notes down there, and they just went with it, and then didn't boot it up and try and play it. And you can see it like immediately started too, so there's like a million issues with the chart, and it's so bad. I don't even know, like, I don't know why they didn't send this to somebody to test at least, or what, but yeah, this is a pretty bad one. But yes, this is why you want to test your chart and make sure you actually kind of know something about guitar, because you do not play octave chords like that. And there were parts where there weren't even octave chords playing, but they just put them anyway. And then like the basic power chord parts, they would just put like random stuff. Like, I don't even know what was going on. So that was a rough one. But yeah, this is just to show how bad some charts are, and this is why you need to test so you don't end up like this person here. Alright, so this part of the video I'm just going to add like random miscellaneous like notation things that I've kind of figured out over the years, and I mean this is just one of those things, it's preference. So this is tap harmonics. So with tap harmonics you gotta like have your hands in a certain position on the left hand, and then you tap with your right. But to notate those, you would basically just, I mean, you could just set it as a tap harmonic. However, if you have the left hand fingering here, so if you know the chord that it is, which if they've tabbed it right, it should like show the chord, and it'll have the artificial harmonic after it. So like in the tab it's a 5, but then the harmonic that's marked is 17. So this is how you would know what fingering it is. But I actually put the chord here, that way people, you know, have an idea of where to put their hands at. So this here, I split the chord. You can go to N and then split, and this basically just makes it to where it doesn't like show up as a chord. All the notes are like individually like that. I set all this to ignore too, so like you could just not hit this in game if you wanted to. But this doesn't create the chord box. And then here you can see I got the these labeled as tap and then natural harmonics, and then I have them set to ignore, and I just created a hand shape for them, and I just hand shaped all of it, and then I changed the fingering here to 5, and for this whole section I deleted like the 17 and all that it generates, and this makes it like a giant stretch in game. I'll put a picture up of what it looks like, and it's just an example of what you can do with tap harmonics. You could also just not put this chord here, and then but I would at least try and figure out whether you hold your left hand at. So on this, you put your finger on 5. I would at least try and stretch the box out to make it long, and that way people know it's tap harmonics. But I mean, realistically, you can just label them tap harmonics, and people could figure it out. If they're playing a song that has that type of stuff in it, they probably know how to do those anyway. So here's another little thing I did. This is one of those things where you do the harmonic, like you put your palm on the string, and then you like do hammer-on and pull-offs while you are sitting there like rubbing your hand up to get the harmonic sound. So we'll listen to it real quick and you can see what I'm talking about. So you can the goal here is to make it show in game what it looks like. I'll put a picture up here, but what I did here was I crazy noted this and I put it on a different string, just so because when you crazy note it, remember, you can make it go over other notes. So I took it to the part where he kind of stops. Also set like this whole section to ignore because I think it may try and count this over top of it. But then I set this to a tap and then a harmonic, and I also set this to ignore. And I changed the grid snap to off, I think, and I tried to get it as close as I could to this note here because you don't want it on top of it because it'll try and create a big chord. Okay, so what you would do is I put that on the 3rd string just to kind of, I think it was on the 2nd string. Yeah, so I just put it on a random string. The goal is to move it up to this string here to show that you're moving your palm up on that string. So you'd actually go find your XML file here. So you open this up in Notepad++. I think you can just use regular Notepad, but I just use Notepad++. You can do a ton of stuff in here, but really the easiest thing to do is just, you probably look for 24. So let me see if I can find I can't remember. I don't think I ignored a whole lot, so you can just look for like ignore maybe. But you can also, okay, so here it is, fret 24. So I forgot the syntax, but you can basically just do like fret 24, and then, so I could have put that in here. But see here now, you can change the string to 3, and it goes from the bottom up. So remember, 1, 2, 3. So now in EOF it'll show up as this, but if you once you edit the XML and then you render it, it'll show up as on the G string there. So this is how to do that as well. And this is just like a little thing, and then I'll show you, what this looks like in game here. So that's how I got that to show up. The problem with editing the XML is as soon as you resave on Editor on Fire, it changes this back to what you put in here. So anytime you pretty much want to do this as the very last thing, like make sure nothing's screwed up on your chart, because if you have to redo something in here, you got to go back and change this, or else it'll show up in game as like on the wrong string, which, I mean, I guess it would still get the point across, but you want to make it show up. Luckily, since these are kind of on the lower frets, I can get away with making it like a 24 slide. But if it's like all the way down here, you may have to make it like a slow unpitched slide to the next fret. But that's just what I have here. But yeah, that's the XML edit stuff. You always want to make sure you do that as like the very last thing, because once you resave Editor on Fire, it's going to screw it up. So just a warning for that. So behind the nut bends, this is something I learned from 65 Days. Shout out 65 Days for the strat here. So this is basically the same thing as the slide harmonics. You edit the XML to trick the game into moving it. So if you can't, the game doesn't recognize like a bent open note. So if you just set this as a 0 here, it won't show the bend notation. So you got to set it to like at least something. So I just set it to 1 here, and then I just set the bend. How it actually goes behind the nut. I don't think it's actually like a 1.5 step bend or whatever, but you would want to actually probably mark it as what it's supposed to be. The only reason I do this is because it's easier to find in the XML file. So basically what you would do is you find your XML file here. We'll pull this up. So you open your XML file here, and then you basically just Control F, and then since this is why I made the bin 3, it's easier to find here. So basically you look through here and find your, it'll be string 0, but it'll be fret 1, although on this one I already did it, so we could act like this is already 1, but now you see here there's also like a tremolo bent note here, but you would just change this fret to 0, and now it'll be an open bin string. So we can check back in here, and then the tremolo, yeah, right here. That one may be a dive bomb, like open string, but I use this for whammy notation too. If it's an open string whammy, and I just put like in the description that it's whammied. So this is how you pull that off, and I'll put some pictures on screen of what it looks like in game, and this is how you can rig up a open string bend to make it look kind of nice. And I always set them to ignore too, because I don't think it actually like looks for the open string note, so I would set it to ignore as well. It's mainly there for cosmetic. So you're probably thinking, bruh, I'm not going to sit here and watch a 2-hour video on how to chart. Why don't you just speed run one and I'll just watch you do it? Say no more, my friends. We'll go ahead and start from scratch and see how fast we can do one. So we'll go ahead and fill this out because apparently my MP3 file doesn't have it. Use source audios folder, keep it all together, 320. The best quality. Go ahead and F5, move to our first beat here, most likely, and then check our tab. We got 175 as the BPM, so go ahead and set that and take a listen here. Oh well, we'll do our leading silence here, so go ahead and leading silence and do your re-encode 10,000. Re-encode again. All right, now we'll go ahead and try and sync this up with the notes maybe. So we'll go ahead and dump the tab in here. Since this tab's good, I can go ahead and do the time signatures, don't do sections. And then this guy plays lead, and then highlight all of it, pull your sustains back, that way we don't run into each other, and now we just listen for sync pretty much. We can slow it down a little bit here and check. Alright, I think we're good here. Let's check it out. Alright, let's see. Yeah, I think this is good. Alright. So go ahead and start from the beginning here. So this is going to be lead. But basically you can use the tricks I showed you earlier, like clone tracks and all that, but they play different things on both the tracks here, so we'll go ahead and get started. So we can start, doing some polishing already while we're going if we know what we're looking for. So these, I'm pretty sure these are not palm muted. They might as well not be, so we handshape these off and then set them as a staccato, and then at the end, and then so you can, this one technically is like unpitched slide, so we'll go down there. Set these are regular taps, not hammer-on taps. Go ahead and connect our slide here, add a little tail on it so it looks nice. Check your little X's here to make sure they're not like 24 or something. I've had that happen. Go ahead and connect this up. This is such a short slide, it probably won't even matter. You know, we got the wrong fret slide here, so let's see. So we can go ahead and put our note here. Change this to, this is 8, so we put our 9 here. Get rid of our little box. We'll go up to 9. Add our little tail. Listen, make sure you know it's in time. Yep. All right. An arpeggio, so we'll go ahead and do our little hand shape here. Root note changes here, so it's another hand shape. So hand shape this out. You remember to add your little tails on the end to make it look nice and pretty. This one keeps going until here, it looks like, so we can go ahead and extend this one out. That's kind of like a half distorted tone. We'll probably just leave it. Maybe make a tone change for that. Make sure our bend's good. I'm setting it to ignore because I hate bends now, so. Make this slide a little clean here. Get rid of the previous slide. Keep a fat finger in the wrong one. So this is like a little arpeggio section here, so. Let's listen to this here. Yeah, that's right, okay. It seems like they did a good job tabbing these, so. Man, I cannot type. Alright, more hand shapers. Maybe check back and make sure. Alright, it looks good so far. Go up to 17. 17. Add a little tail onto them. Keep going, more hand shapes. So these probably won't pick up, so we can control L and then set them to ignore. actually. Oh, whoops. Yeah, we can. Oh, I think we got stuck on quarter step somehow. So I'll make this a 19 here. I forgot the hotkey. Oh, wrong button. Definitely make sure you don't mark all of them as harmonics on accident. If the note goes to 24, definitely set it to ignore, so we can just set all this to ignore probably, because the game doesn't recognize 24 too well. So I think we're good now. We'll go ahead and save, and then double check the sync just to make sure. Should be good. All right, now we'll go ahead and do our little leading silence thing here. You'd normally do this after you're done with everything, but since I'm not going to do any more tabs, remember we got a full bar back, so get to your 2 here, and then add your phrase, and then count. Go ahead and save, and now we can start doing our sections here. So. Oh yeah, we start doing our fret hand positions too, so we'll go ahead and generate fret hand positions, and then go change our preferences here. I think want to keep this at 7. That way it stretches it, but then we also take the 0 back to 7. Put this at 7 as well. Yep. And then we put this at, as is already, it's, all right, we put it in 3. That way it's like on top of this note here, so you're already looking at it. I think I don't really do this, but I think you're supposed to actually put your, like the index starting at this 3 here. Just so I think on this one it's fine, but if it's out of the chart, it'll make it look a little funky sometimes. So just keep that in mind for slides. Oh yeah, we need to look at these palm muted zeros. 5, we're good there. This is 7, so we're good there. This goes to 12. We want this at 3. That way the 0 appears over top of that chord there. That way it's not too bad to look at. It's on the way there with your eyes, basically. This is 10, 12. Alright. I think really only like a couple spots needed touch-ups on it. This will probably be way down there, so let's go ahead and set this to 7. Set this to 3. I'm just mainly doing this to make the open note appear, right next to this chord. That way it's already there when you move your eyes up, basically. 12, 15. We could technically just leave this at 12, but it's fine. We'll just let it change. This would be 3 again. I pressed the wrong button. I don't know how far. Okay. Good there. I think most of this was good. I don't think any of this needed to be changed. It could definitely use some polishing up, but for now, yeah, put these down at, get rid of that. Let me start 12 here. Oops, 12. We can go ahead and start 12 here. Actually, this goes to 11, don't it? Oh, no, it goes down, okay. So go ahead and get rid of our... Start our 11 here, and then go back to 12 here. Go back to 12, do the same thing we did there. Be 13, 12, 13, 11, and then move our 11 down here. Our 12. Go ahead and get rid of this 17. That way it stays in line with all these other ones. The lowest this goes is 16. Yep. So just delete our 19. Actually, nope. The 19's right. Okay. All right. Nice. So go ahead and do sections. So let's find some parts that look difficult and we need practice. This definitely is one. Remember, you don't want to put this on top of a handshape because it can break it, so you want to do a couple notes behind it. I'll start this one a little later. And we'll give them this. Nah, actually, you go up here. Ah, never mind, we'll go back. It's our last section. Okay. Do our chords here. How would I put my hand in this? 2. You can use T for thumb, by the way, in the fingering. So, just a little tip there. 1, 3, 4. Ew, I gotta get my guitar out for this one. This is a funky one. Just double check your chords, make sure you can get your finger into it. What a weird chord to get your finger into. Most likely how this one goes, but double check. Yep. 1, 3, 4, 2. Okay. I'll see what that was. No, I literally don't care. Okay. I think, yeah, this starts at 7. Okay. Yeah, so this should make the zeros appear at the 7. That way they're not like a big long 0 note. But you can leave that if you want. I just did that because I think it looks better. So we got silence sections, fret-hand positions. I don't think I really need a tone change at that one part, so we'll just leave it. Okay, I think it looks good, so we'll go ahead and pull up the builder here. So go ahead and pull up the DLC builder and load our arrangement here. And then let me find our little album cover here. Make sure you check your year down here too, because sometimes this get messed up. I think this is 2018. Oh, caps lock. Go ahead and add our tone. I'm just going to do my usual. Make sure I change this to distortion. Add our little audio file. Make sure you use a little WAV file here. Create a preview, 30 seconds, sure. Check over this, make sure your lead bass is set. All right, I think we're good. Let's go ahead and build it and boot it up in game. Check it out. 22 minutes, not too bad. So we'll see how the chart looks. Hopefully it's not too bad. There we go. Let's check it out and see what it looks like. Tuning's good. A440. Okay. All right. Let's see how busted the chart is. Got our leading silence. Oh, broken slide there. But we can always go back and fix that. No big deal. Must have fat fingered the wrong key. Apparently our link next didn't apply. That's cool. All right, so definitely a few mistakes, but that is, pretty good chart. It lines up. All the hand shapes are pretty decent. Thanks, Rocksmith, man. I appreciate that. But as you can see, you can bang out a pretty decent chart in like 20 minutes, and then obviously you just pull back up your editor on fire and fix those changes. So I'll just pull this back up, load real quick, and then go find those like the broken slides and all that. So obviously there's a few mistakes, but more than passable enough chart. This is better than like 90% of charts on Customs Forge, honestly. So that's a good thing. So hopefully you learned something in that. That I picked that song for a reason. It kind of had like a mix of like those slide into notes that are broken, and then just like hand shapes and some stuff that need to be polished and linked. So that's like a good little starter chart. I feel like to hopefully somebody learn something from it. All right, so the final part of the video is lyrics. This is where you find another video because honestly, the way I do it is so half-assed that it's like almost not really worth doing. But I'll show you what I do. So I use AJ Chili's Better Ultrastar Creator. The program that you normally use is called Ultrastar Creator, but it is a pain in the ass to use. But I'll put the link to this website here. But AJ Chili made it. Shout out to him. Has provided the lyrics for all my charts. This website has. It's pretty nice. So basically you just go here, select your audio source, and then load it up, and then you can use H to place the lyrics. So you'd put your lyrics here and then import. So you just copy and paste from Genius or whatever, and then you get your little timeline here, and then you can just press H to place the lyric, and then you can use J and K to place like phrase ending things. So you can end like the lyric itself, and then you can end the verse. I just do both at the same time. So like I would, get some vocals going, and then like when I feel like it's gonna reach the edge of the screen, I just add like JK and I just stack them on top of each other. And this is like a super half-assed way of doing it. It doesn't do syllables or anything. It just does like the entire word. So this is like the most lazy way you can do it. You can use this website to do syllables and stuff, but I don't even waste my time. So I would recommend watching an Ultrastar video if you want your lyrics to actually be good. But I'll show you an example of how once you do your entire lyric set with this, what you do at the end. Alright, so basically, once you finish on the website, it'll have you type in like the song name and all that, and then I guess where it's on like Chrome or whatever, it prints out Unicode characters sometimes. So sometimes when you import this into EOF, it will like some lyrics will be screwed up, and you can edit them in EOF too. But I always go in here and I do Control H, and then I always get the apostrophe here, and usually I'll find just one in the song. I've already did this one though, so I'll just find one. This one may not even have one. Yeah, so I'll find one, and I know this. I mean, this is just from experience. The Unicode, like it for some reason uses a different apostrophe, and then replace it with like a regular one, and then just do replace all, and it goes through and places them. I just do that one. That seems to usually fix it, but there's some other Unicode characters it throws in there, so it's just like a downfall of the website. But basically, once you're done with that, I've already done this before, but you would just go into Editor on Fire and go press F8 on the keyboard, and then you would import your lyrics here, and then you'll see now they'll show up across the top here. So, and then when you go to save, sometimes it'll pop up and be like, oh, you got lyrics that are messed up, and then you get a song track and vocals, and then it'll point you to which one's messed up, and you just click on the one that's messed up and press L, and then you can change it. So you can also just straight up do lyrics in Editor on Fire too, but screw that. So there's a bunch of different ways to do lyrics. This is just the way I do it. So it's really lazy, and then it'll create a vocal path in Editor on Fire for your DLC builder, and you just put that in there, and it's good to go. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope y'all enjoyed. I tried to, put everything I know out there. I'm sure I missed something. I'm sure I'll think as soon as I upload it, I should have done this, whatever. I pretty much covered most of the stuff you should go over at least put out a decent chart. And that's you'll be miles ahead of everybody else at that point, even if you follow just a couple things in this video. So, but even I'm still learning. I still learn stuff every day. So don't be scared to Google it. Check the Customs Forge forums or ask people. You can maybe leave a comment. I may respond to it if you have any issues or questions. And otherwise, I hope you enjoyed. I may put a little like TLDR checklist at the end of the video. That way you can just like skip straight to the end after you've done like your first chart or something and just kind of look over the little checklist to make sure you got everything set up. But yeah, just feel free to leave any feedback, comments, questions in the comments. Maybe I'll check out some of the questions. And if you're expert charter, feel free to throw some info of your own in the comments. The whole reason I put this out is to help people learn how to chart. So if there's something I missed, for sure, definitely let others know about it and, upvote the comments and everything. And thanks for watching again.